You ready?
Yes.
All right. This meeting is being held as an electronic meeting pursuant to and in compliance with the City of Richmond Ordinance 2020-093 and the school board's resolution approved on April 20th, 2020. Simultaneous translation is being provided tonight in Spanish via Zoom, and the link to access the Zoom meeting can be found in the meeting notice. Once logged in, click Interpretation and select Spanish to listen. All meeting participants are encouraged to speak slowly and deliberately to allow for accurate translation. The notice of the meeting stated the following, that it would be a virtual meeting and it would be live streamed on the school division's Facebook page. The public could view it there and the link was provided. The notice also stated that the board would not receive in-person public comment. However, public comments could be submitted to the clerk and the email address was included in the notice. Comments received would be posted to board docs. The agenda for the meeting was also posted to the board docs link. And after roll call, we will determine how many and which board members are participating. So let me get back to that.
All right.
Ms. Page, Ms. Cosby, Mr. Young,
Yeah.
Dr. Sapini,
Present.
Mrs. Dorr, Mr. Barlow,
Here.
Ms. Owen, you're here, and Ms. Burke,
Here.
Ms. Gibson.
Here.
You have a quorum, it looks like, Madam Chair. So,
Yeah, Miss.
okay. I only have one amendment, and that is to add receive a resolution recognizing School Bus Safety Week. Are there any other amendments? Are there no more amendments? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
No.
I'm sorry, I got kicked off and now I'm back. So
Okay, thank you.
did we have the amendment about the resolution?
Yes, that was the only one I had.
Okay.
So you need a motion to adopt your agenda?
So did we have, okay.
So
Can I
moved.
have that motion? All right, that was Mr. Barlow. Is there a second?
It's gonna be a long night at this rate.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burke has seconded. All right, I assume there's no discussion, so we will continue.
Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini, I'm sorry, he wasn't here. Ms. Dorr,
Right.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
She not
Ms.
here either.
Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
and Ms. Owen.
And Ms. Page is joining us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Page.
And at this point,
The motion passed.
at this point, I would like to ask my colleagues and we're having a time tonight. Before we go on, at this point, I would like to ask my colleagues and the public to pause for a moment of silence for the member of our transportation team who died of COVID-19 10 days ago. Goodness. We offer our sincere condolences to the family. Thank you. Okay. Now we are asking to approve the minutes of the October 5th meeting. Is there a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second.
Page and Mr. Barlow. All right, is there discussion? All right, then let us have the vote.
I'm sorry, my computer's a little slow. Okay, so the motion was made by Mr. Barlow.
No,
And
made by Ms. Page.
Page, seconded by Barlow.
Yes.
Ms. Page,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby, Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini, Ms. Dorr, Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Owen,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Public information, we had somewhat in the minutes tonight. So if it's okay with the board members, I would like to say that we'll limit them to 2 minutes. And I think most of them seem to me to be fairly short, so we may be able to get all the way through them. And Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris still there?
Yes.
Nope. Yes, there. Ms. Wilson is not feeling well today. Would you be willing to tackle the public comments for us?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I need to pull them up. Give me 1 second.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. I will time you.
Actually, I don't see them.
I don't. Oh, nope, I have them.
Okay, good.
Yep, I have them. Okay.
There
Andrea
they are.
Holmes. New schedule is better, but I think this question should be directed and answered by the students. My daughter is stressed out currently. This is too much. I don't understand why they are sitting in school for 7+ hours doing no work. After school, they are still sitting there for an additional 4 hours. That's too much for me. Sequoia Ross, below you will find the textbook definition of working poor. I was ecstatic when I learned that an increase was approved and instructional support staff would finally earn a living wage. I was confident that the school board would be appalled to learn that substitute teachers earn more per hour than dedicated contractual staff. I was almost sure that I would be able to fully support my children without the assistance of subsidized housing and government assistance to feed and provide medical care. I thought we were valued more. For every instructional assistant that earned a bachelor's degree or master's, this is an insult. For every IA that has been bitten, punched, or injured on the job, this is an insult. For every IA that is expected to support teachers during this virtual Reopen with Love initiative without being given any supplies to navigate virtually, this is an insult. I have tears in my eyes as I write this. This increase is a joke. I can't do any more with this increase than what I was earning before. An increase is supposed to bump you to another threshold. An increase is supposed to create opportunities for growth and boost morale. When you Google IA salaries in the United States, Virginia is one of the lowest in the country. This increase is by no means competitive. Would you be able to survive and support a family on this salary? I've been with RPS a long time, first as a student, Henderson, Richmond Community Class of 95, culinary arts teacher, substitute teacher, a Holton parent for 13 years now, and now as an instructional assistant. I've served my time well. I've loved every minute of nurturing, shaping, loving, learning, and growing, but this has given me the courage to leave. I'm giving RPS one last year as we all face unprecedented times. Hopefully the powers that be will finally recognize.
Time.
Jasmine Johnson, I attend John Marshall School as a sophomore. After looking at the draft schedule for high school, I think it's a great idea. I especially like the long period of asynchronous time after short synchronous sessions of period 1 and period 2. Sarah Price, I write as a parent of an RPS senior, Richmond Community High School, and as someone who has been steeped in the depth of the transition to remote teaching and supporting faculty at Virginia Commonwealth University. To state my point up front, the revised schedule is a vast improvement over the all synchronous, all day camera on schedule, which was the original high school plan. It is imperative that high school students learn to embrace self-directed learning and practice skills that push them toward independence. In order to do this well, students must have the flexibility to learn in both synchronous and asynchronous formats. The new schedule allows a mental break to process information and apply learning using several different approaches, synchronous and asynchronous, which are skills that our high school students need as emerging adults. Embracing both synchronous and asynchronous learning is also a much more effective embrace of a universal design for learning approach, since our students do not all learn well in the same types of virtual environments. As a higher education professional, I assert that these are the skills they will need for success in college, particularly in the era of higher education, where both synchronous and asynchronous learning are woven into college courses routinely, not just related to COVID-19 and remote teaching. We work hard at a college level to avoid Zoom fatigue, and I found it distressing that my daughter was spending twice as long on Zoom as my undergraduate students were. Please keep the revised high school schedule and help bolster teacher confidence by making professional development available so that they can learn the incredible range of asynchronous learning options and applications, which will help our high school students remain engaged and prepare for higher education success. Thank you for your time and willingness to receive this parental feedback. Jasmine Stewart, I think the schedule still seems a bit long. Ending the day at 12:30 or 1 would seem more appropriate for a first grader, in my opinion. However, ending at 1:30 seems much better than where we are now. Hoping this goes in effect soon. Thank you for all your time looking into this matter. Rodney Bakersville, I think the schedule still seems a bit long. Ending the day at 12:30 or 1 would seem more appropriate for a first grader, in my opinion. However, ending at 1:30 seems much better than where we are now. Hoping this goes into effect soon. Thank you for your time. Dennis Mallory. During the virtual public hearing held on August 17th, letters from the John F. Kennedy High School alumni were read requesting the name Armstrong High School on the building, requesting that the name Armstrong High School on the building at 2300 Cool Lane be changed back to the original name of John F. Kennedy, which opened in 1968. The letters touched on the history, the love, the legacy, and the unfortunate plight that we endured when the name was changed to Armstrong in 2004 without the consideration of Kennedy's students and alumni. Fast forward from 2004 to today. Our spirit is still strong as ever as we meet for our annual summer picnic with 200 plus attending and our annual Christmas party with 500 attending since 2015. And we are all connected with each other exclusively on our Facebook and classmates.com pages that reach over 4,000 alumni nationwide. Recently, 2 virtual meetings with participation from both Armstrong and Kennedy alumni were held, and we came to a considerable compromise and decided that the requested name be Armstrong Kennedy High School. For the record, this was the name on the building back in 1980 when the school board decided to merge 7 high schools into 3, which lasted for several years. Armstrong Kennedy school colors back then were blue and gold, and the mascot was the jaguar. We decided this is the most reasonable thing to do as it was done before. Overall, we see this as a win-win situation for both schools and also realize that it is better together with the abundance of resources we both have. This name change will be unique and different in comparison to the renaming of schools that bears the name of Civil War Confederate soldiers due to the fact that Civil War Lieutenant Samuel C. Armstrong was a Union soldier who immediately after the war began creating establishments to educate Black people that resulted in the Hampton Institute in 1868 and Armstrong High School.
Time.
Garnett Hammerman. I'm very proud to have attended John F. Kennedy High School at 2300 Cool Lane from 1971 to 1974. On the first day of my freshman year there, which was the first day of crosstown busing, we were greeted not only by fellow students and teachers, but also by the media. They wanted to capture all the news about this event, especially the arrival of our classmate, Taylor, the daughter of our governor, Linwood Holton. Our administration and teachers taught us from the day we entered the doors that we were all together, brothers and sisters for life, in the Cougar family, whether in class or on the fields or on the Richmond streets. Our teachers did not concern themselves with classwork. Perhaps more important than the bookwork they involved us in was their roles as our mentors. They volunteered their time to find something that would light a spark in each of us. There was a club, a sport, or an activity for everyone. Those playing sports might earn a college scholarship, but it was certain that anyone in a Cougar uniform was guaranteed the admiration of classmates and the respect of competitors across the metropolitan Richmond area. I understand the need to come to an equitable agreement that allows the reflection of 2 historic schools in the east end of our city. I therefore support the renaming of this building to Armstrong Kennedy High School, and I trust that the strong alumni groups from both of the original schools can support students at the renamed location. Diane Ritchie Nealon. I spent my entire 36-year career with RPS at 2300 Cool Lane. From fall 1969 through 2004 at John F. Kennedy High, plus the first year of the merger turned takeover. I entered the halls of JFK as a 22-year-old Longwood graduate who really had no clue what to expect. I retired.
Time.
This was a new person, Ms. Wilson.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. I retired having been recognized as a national award-winning teacher in both geography and economics and a REB award winner. I credit my experiences at Kennedy for all the accolades. I found a second family of faculty who mentored me and students whom I could mentor. The needs of my students and their support pushed me to further my education so that I could fully meet those needs. Long before financial literacy became a buzzword, the Kennedy administration allowed me to create a year-long course using junior achievement and practices long in use by my faculty mentor, Mrs. Katie Watkins. The staff taught me what I call compassionate discipline, strong and loving guidance. To this day, many of my former students call me Ma, Mom, Mama D, and so forth. When word of the potential closing of the Armstrong building began to emerge, those of us at Kennedy were not informed of any community meetings and were led to believe that the solution would probably be a return to the Armstrong Kennedy name. Led by a school board member who was an Armstrong graduate, we were deliberately kept in the dark, and we were stunned by the school board vote to eliminate JFK and rename our building. When we returned to school in the fall of 2004, every physical trace of JFK had been eliminated. In spite of the superintendent's promise that there would be at least a showcase to remember JFK, our athletic banners, trophies, etc., were trashed. Though a few were saved by our coaching staff. Lockers had been painted blue and orange. I won't go into the atmosphere created by the new leadership, except to say that within a few months, I put in my retirement papers, several years earlier than planned. You now have a chance to right this wrong by returning the name John F. Kennedy High School to the building at 2300 Cool Lane. Although we would love to return its original name and give former students and staff their history,
Aye.
Rita Miller. It was my humble request that we rename the current Armstrong High School Kennedy Armstrong High School. But I do understand that the alternative choice of Armstrong Kennedy might need to prevail. Over the past 16 years, the alumni of John F. Kennedy High School have struggled with the loss of our school. Yes, the building remains, but the name it bears is not reflective of the heart and soul of what the school name means to those of us who attended under the name of John F. Kennedy High School. Thus, we definitely need our name back on the building. We were a strong student body and remain a strong alumni association. We had great relationships with our teachers and mentors, and those relationships remain today. When I think about one of my favorite lines in our alma mater, which says, "We ask not what we'll gain, but what is ours to give." The phrase is the epitome of our request to regain the name of our school on the building at 2300 Cool Lane, which will give our Richmond community the opportunity to recognize the unity between John F. Kennedy High School and Armstrong High School, two great schools that represent the East End area of Richmond. Each has a great history, individually and collectively. Each has emboldened the lives of many that have made their mark all over this world. It is at this time we seek to join forces to continue to build greatness in this community, which will further build the greatness of our city. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sade Lee. The new schedule would be awesome for our household, as I have a 4th grader and a kindergartner in my home, and I work an intense work schedule from home. I recently had to adjust my work schedule to make sure my 2 are accommodated. So this will help me from home. So this will help work from home parents so much, and it can help the younger kids stay focused. Tom Hartman, college placement. A couple years ago, it came out that only a handful of RPS graduates were enrolled at BCU, RPS, BCU. Surely, I mean a handful of hundreds? No, only a handful of RPS graduates were enrolled at BCU. I request an update. Caitlin Waldron. Every week I write in. Every week it doesn't matter. I appreciate the attempt to shorten the day, I guess, but being on a Google Meet from 8:30 until 4:20 p.m. makes me feel like teachers aren't trusted. You're shortening a schedule for the kids. Stellar. However, you're not trusting the adults. When do teachers get to be treated like adults and trusted? We have to blindly trust students during asynchronous work. Why are we trusted only 20% of the week? Do better. Otessa Middleland Mile. I am a 3rd district resident, proud graduate of Bellevue, Henderson, and John Marshall, with 3 sons attending elementary, middle, and high school in RPS. I'm beyond proud of the stellar job Superintendent Cameras has done and look forward to him leading our district for years to come. He leads with compassion, provides transparency, and gives every parent his direct email address. The pandemic disrupted our lives, and Superintendent Cameras made the health of our children, teachers, staff, and contractors a priority by being among the first to close in-person school. With the support of the school board members who recognized disparities, he ensured food distribution continued and that those most in need received Chromebooks and hotspots. I've spoken with parents in the neighboring districts and as far away as California, and they barely heard from their superintendent. Superintendent Cameras kept us updated daily for the past 7 months, even on weekends, holidays, and during the summer. This pandemic is unprecedented, and his response has been unprecedented. I attended sessions he hosted during Labor Day weekend, guiding parents through logging in for school. Reopening with Love was a wonderful effort that encouraged grace and urged us to be mindful of our mental health. Under his leadership, we did not wait until there were uprisings to rename schools named after Confederate leaders. I also look forward to students physically occupying our brand new school buildings. RPS must continue along this positive path with Superintendent Cameras. Teresa Kennedy. I am a 3rd district resident and RPS parent twice over. I am commenting tonight because I know that the superintendent's contract is up next summer, and I want to urge the board to renew. Superintendent Cameras and his team are doing an amazing work in RPS, work unparalleled in the region. They have created a vision for RPS. They are communicative and understanding, and they prioritize meeting the needs of the underserved over the needs of the privileged. Please do not listen to the angry minority who will never be pleased with anything when making your decision. Please just look at the work RPS leadership is doing and how it is building community and making us all better and stronger. RPS is growing and moving forward in a way I haven't seen in the past 17 years. RPS is growing and moving forward in a way I haven't seen in the 17 years I've lived in Richmond. Not renewing Superintendent Cameras' contract would be a huge mistake and frankly, our own fault for taking such a gift for granted. Michael Miles. I've had my children in Richmond Public Schools for the past dozen years, and Jason Cameras is by far the best superintendent we've had during that time. He puts a personal touch on everything he does and offers a calm voice of reason when there are often none. I have appreciated his approach in all matters, including those on race, nurture versus discipline in the school system, and various other challenging topics. Jason Cameras acts with a level of sincerity on all issues, and I can truly appreciate that. I also appreciate the fact that he chose to have his children attend their zone schools in Richmond Public Schools, sending the message that he will treat our children as if they were his own. He seems to have been transparent on all issues since day one, and that is a rarity with those in leadership positions. I truly hope the school board ensures he remains as superintendent of Richmond Public Schools for a while. Julie and David Joyner. We are writing to express our support for the continued success of RPS with Jason Cameras as our superintendent. Mr. Cameras is an excellent leader, and with his guidance, RPS has undergone a remarkable shift in a very short order. The administrative team has dealt with underfunded schools, crumbling infrastructure, and accreditation challenges head on and taken on tasks such as partnering with the city on funding, developing and implementing the strategic plan, and rezoning. The pandemic has highlighted an agile and innovative team that identified and implemented solutions in short order. For the first time in our memories, RPS is being lauded as a positive example, and that is due to our current administrative leadership. Please extend Mr. Cameras a contract so that RPS may continue to benefit from the strongest administrative leadership Richmond Public Schools has experienced in the last 20 years. Thank you. Stacy and Chris Hall. We are writing to express our support for the continued success of Richmond Public Schools with Jason Cameras as superintendent. Mr. Cameras has been an outstanding leader for RPS, navigating tremendous challenges, including deteriorating infrastructure, lack of appropriate funding, and accreditation obstacles. We believe Mr. Cameras has the right team in place to continue collaborating with the City of Richmond as it relates to rezoning, the strategic plan implementation, and funding. The administrative team pivoted successfully during the pandemic, and we are very hopeful about the future of RPS with Mr. Cameras as superintendent. We ask that you extend Mr. Cameras' contract as we feel his leadership is what Richmond needs now. Caitlin Waldron. While leading a district PD today, we don't understand why students who haven't even opened their assignments are able to get a 50 in class, and the other students who are attending class and completing assignments can score less than. This is ridiculous. Where is the grace for the teachers? Where is the student accountability? You cannot continue to hold teachers to the fire and allowing us to burn while students watch and laugh. James Robinson. On behalf of the family members of the city lady who died, I don't think Kenya Gibson has no right to expose her like that. It should have been private, especially when the person was at home while school was closed. She hadn't worked in a few months, so it's not a city involvement situation. And it's not Ms. Gibson's job to expose a person like that. I disagree with it. That was wrong and shouldn't have been done to anyone else. I'm blown from this. It's unacceptable. Ms. Gibson needs to talk to how we could prevent the spread, not putting people's private business out there. No one was in harm's way. The lady was at home, no contact with any kids, nor teachers or parents. So this shouldn't have been talked about, period. Meredith Thompson. I would appreciate an update from the health department on the rate of infection for RPS versus RVA at a whole. Anecdotally, for a school district not going to school in person, the frequency of notifications of RPS employee COVID-19 infections are alarming and seem to far exceed the local rates of infection. Additionally, it is an inaccurate narrative that everyone that needs a computer has received one. Many of us were asked to wait to request computers if we could get by initially. This does not mean that our children do not require a computer or that we are not continuing to be inconvenienced by the lack of laptops we were told repeatedly would arrive by the end of September. Also, have any of you tried to take a class or do any assignments on the tablets? It's truly awful. Since the only school board reps that have current RPS students are Dr. Sapini and Ms. Gibson, how many of you have taken the time by now to spend a full online day in the classroom? It is hard to govern in this once-in-a-lifetime environment in which you have no firsthand experience, I would imagine. Additionally, can we please have a facilities update? What, if anything, is being done in the schools to ready them for children to return in person whenever safe to do so? Has one broken sink been fixed or one additional sink been placed? Do you as a board have any idea how many hand washing stations would be required to return to school safely at some point? Or are you going to wait to the last minute to address only to realize, unsurprising to anyone, that we are woefully unprepared? Anna Heaton. It has come to my attention that Superintendent Cameras' contract might be up for review soon, and I wanted to put in a word of support for him, continuing on with the work and mission for Richmond Public Schools. I have been so impressed by his work regarding funding, equity, and handling of food insecurity/technology needs during the pandemic. I hope that he will be able to finish the work he started for our children here in the city. Megan Kennedy. I wanted to quickly write showing my support of Superintendent Jason Cameras. His calm, positive, transparent, and engaged leadership throughout COVID has been amazing. And I fully believe he is leading RPS with love during these unprecedented times. Even before COVID, I have been impressed with how approachable and thoughtful he approaches his position for students, teachers, staff, and families. I hope that our school board will recognize the value Mr. Cameras brings to our school system and consider renewing his contract, continuing his journey in Richmond. Superintendent Cameras has my respect and support, and I am proud to be a RPS family under his leadership. Elliot Haspel. I'm a parent with a daughter at Barack Obama Elementary School. I know you will soon be considering the renewal of Superintendent Cameras' contract. As the parent of a kindergartner, I wanted to say I hope you will vote to renew Superintendent Cameras' contract. I appreciate the leadership he has shown and hope he can continue building on the direction he's been leading RPS. Thank you for your time. Tara Fitzpatrick. I'd like to share my support for the renewal of Mr. Cameras' contract. Though I don't always agree with every decision made, I think that he and his leadership team are doing a great job. His level of communication and community engagement throughout his tenure, but especially since the pandemic hit in March, has been stellar. Equally as important, I think that RPS needs to commit to staying the course. We cannot keep cycling through leadership. Molly Brannon. Dear School Board, I am the parent of 2 children at Linwood Holton Elementary School, and I am writing to convey my appreciation and respect for Superintendent Cameras. His clear and frequent communication with the RPS community has made this challenging time so much easier to navigate. He has guided RPS with a steady hand while also demonstrating a willingness to listen to parents, teachers, and staff. He has truly embodied the reopening with love ethos. I sincerely hope he will continue in his role as superintendent. Kim Gomez, as a mother of 3 children in RPS and as a community member, I strongly support and appreciate the genuine hard work Jason Cameras and his team put forth on a daily basis. The communication he delivers via email, text messages, and physical community outreach to help to engage all families in the work of educating our youth. I have so many good things to say about him that it is hard to decide which is the most important. So I will end with what may be the biggest strength I believe Jason brings to the school system, and that is his genuine love of students and families. The man says what he means what he says, and does the hard work to take action in a collective way. We need this kind of leadership. That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. And I would like to thank everyone who took the time to write in to us. Know that we do read and consider everything that you have to tell us, and that you can always contact any of us by email or phone between meetings. So thank you very much. Okay, and I see that we've been joined by Ms. Dorr. Welcome, Ms. Dorr. I know that Ms. Cosby was having a hard time getting in. Mr. Stanley, can you double check that for us? Thank you. Okay. Let us move on then to board action items 3.01, receive for action the personnel actions. Do I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
That was Mr. Barlow. Is there, and Ms. Burke has seconded. Is there any
Seconded.
discussion? I don't see anything in the chat. All right, then Ms. Wilson, let us move to the vote for the personnel actions.
Ms. Page?
Yes.
I think Ms. Cosby was in. Ms. Cosby, are you still in? Okay, Mr. Young,
Aye.
Dr. Sapini? Still not. Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson? Is Ms. Gibson still here?
Ms. Gibson, you're on, she's here. Ms. Gibson, you're on mute. I don't know.
Okay.
Continue.
Ms. Burke
Yes.
and Ms. Owen?
Yes, Dr. Sapini is here.
Dr. Sapini, do you want to vote on the personnel actions?
Yes.
Is yes your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And Ms. Gibson, are you off of mute yet? Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right, then we will receive the Title IX statement. Mr.
Okay,
Desko, is this you or is this Ms. Lewis?
Ms. Wilson. I'm waiting for it to open. Give me one moment.
Oh, okay.
Your Title IX statement is your non-discrimination policy, and it is 7-1.1 in your policy manual. It is still not opening for me. Give me one moment. Okay, again, your Title IX statement is in your non-discrimination policy 7-1.1. It also includes your Section 504 regulations. That statement tells you who your Title IX coordinators are and where to send inquiries. Your general and student inquiries go to Mr. Timothy Williams, who is the Title IX coordinator. Your employment inquiries go to the talent office. Your Section 504 questions go to Ms. Renisha Parks, who is your 504 coordinator. And your ADA coordinator is also Mr. Timothy Williams. Any other questions may also be sent to the United States Department of Education Office of Civil Rights, which is in Washington, D.C., and that address and phone number is also included in your policy. And that is just your update on your Title IX statement, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank
It
you.
occurs to me that we never adopted the agenda
Yes, we did.
because we were short. We
We
did?
did.
Okay, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent.
And that
All right.
item was
All
added
right.
under administration business. I don't know if you want to move it, but right now it's currently the last item under your administration business.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Mhm.
All right, moving on to the 2020 Student Activity Fund audits. And I believe I see Mr. Parker.
Yes, good evening,
Hello,
everyone. Can you
Mr.
all hear me?
Parker. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes.
Good. So we wanted to present to you all, and I have LaTanya Holloway, who's also an internal auditor in the internal audit shop, the Student Activity Fund for the 1920 fiscal years 2019-2020 year school year. Overall, just want to give a brief synopsis of what went on. About 7 schools got audited, or we conducted audits on 7 schools where either a finance officer or principal had changed hands. Throughout those 7 schools, again, there were approximately 77 findings. Each principal did receive his or her actual detailed finding sheet for their school that encompasses all their findings, as well as corrective actions that they told us that they would put into place, and then we would go back at some point, probably real soon this year in the fiscal year 21, and we'll do some remediation work and find out about that. So what I'll do now is I'll present my screen, which is the actual report for people to see, and I'll let LaTanya talk us through it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good evening, everyone. Basically, we based our findings off of 3 risk factors, and those 3 risk ratings. And the 3 risk ratings that we normally use are low, which are controls are in place, but the level of compliance varies with RPS policies and procedures. There's moderate, controls are in place, but are not sufficiently complied with RPS policies and procedures, and high. Controls are not in place or are adequate compliance with RPS policies and procedures. And if something that is rated high, action should be taken immediately to rectify those issues. As far as the audit goes, there were a total of 5 categories that we reviewed: contracts, which we looked at vendor oversight, verification of commission rates and labor cost, commission funds received timely and deposited in the proper account, PTA, PTO operated in compliance with local, state, and federal laws, cash receipts, controls and safeguards over cash receipts, verification that receipts were deposited in the appropriate account, collections by staff and the timely transmittal of these receipts to the finance officer, completeness of the settlement sheet, adequate supporting documentation, a sample of receipts for, basically we took a sample of receipts for accuracy and compliance with policies, regulations, and procedures. Check disbursements, controls and safeguards over cash disbursements, timeliness of payments, completeness of the expenditure voucher form, authorized signatures on all check disbursements, properly record and void checks, Purchases were made in accordance with policies, regulations, and procedures. A sample of expenditures for proper supporting documentation with compliance of policies, regulations, and procedures. And then accounting procedures. We looked at school safes to ensure they were securely located, properly locked, and access properly restricted. Reconciliations for completeness, accuracy, and timeliness. Deficit and inactive accounts, timeliness of fees and fines, and timeliness of deposits. So within that, we go to finding number 1, which is contracts. Some of the things that we noted when we reviewed the contracts within the school system is there's no evidence of valid contracts in the vendor contract portal for the picture contracts as well as the vending contracts. There were co-op contracts, but it did not indicate Richmond Public Schools on those co-op contracts. Finding category number 2 is PTAs and PTOs. What we noted was there was no evidence of proper documentation for insurance, the yearly audits, 990 documentation, EIN numbers, and 5013Cs. Finding number 3, cash receipts. No or inadequate supporting documentation, incomplete, inaccurate, or not utilizing the settlement form. Sponsors or teachers did not turn in funds daily to the finance officers. There were missing receipts. We look through receipt books, and if we see that they're not in numerical order, that's what we state as being missing receipts. Inability to properly enter receipts into EPS. There were receipts that were not entered into EPS. Category number 4, cash disbursements. Invoices were not paid timely. There was no or inadequate supporting documentation. No evidence of pre-approval from the principal. Dual signatures. There was one signature or no principal signature on the checks. Rubber stamps were used to approve expenditure vouchers. Checks not properly voided. It did not have the signature portion removed and the word void written across the check. And the check was not properly retained in the files. Lack of check details, meaning the written or numerical amounts were not on the checks. Finding number 5, accounting procedures. This is the largest discrepancies that we noted during the entire audit. So this area needs a great deal of improvement. Not utilizing safes to secure financial resources. Outstanding checks greater than 180 days. Deposits to the bank were not made timely. Principals did not sign or date reconciliations to show evidence that they actually reviewed the reconciliations. Reconciliations were not completed timely. Untimely submission of fees and fines submitted to the finance department. Accounts were inactive for more than 1 fiscal year. Accounts were deficit at the end of the year, June 30, 2019. There was excessive spending. We noted that there was food and clothing purchases. Numerous data entry errors. There were a lot of duplicate transactions that were entered into EPS. And the amounts for those that was on the papers that they printed out, the paperwork that they printed out was actually different than the amounts that they entered into EPS. Is there any questions that you all may have of me?
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Mr. Barlow has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Holloway, thank you for presenting this. It does seem like a lot of findings to me, given that it's 7 schools. So we're averaging 11 per school at this point. And I'm curious to know from your experience, because I know that you've worked in other districts doing these types of audits. Is that normal? It seems high. And then if it is in fact high, do you have any thoughts about what we should be doing moving forward? I'd certainly like to hear anything about training in particular. I know it's been discussed in committee meetings.
The number is considerably high for the findings that we have noted. We are working with finance closely to start training the principals as well as the finance officers. We actually have a training with the principals this Thursday. And we also worked with finance to update the student activity fund manual. So we'll be presenting that to the principals for them to review, to get a better understanding of what the responsibilities are as it relates to student activity funds, as well as the finance officers understanding what their responsibilities are in regards to student activity funds. Also, the finance department has stated that they will work one-on-one with individuals who they see that have a lot of audible occurrences, and they will do remediation with them to help them get on pace and to reduce some of the findings.
So well, I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Dorr, then Ms. Burke, then Ms. Page.
My question was mostly about I think you referenced it, Ms. Holloway, but if you have any additional thoughts on some of the findings from our committee meeting and our recommendations as it relates to additional training and making sure that there's clear delineation of duties and responsibilities between finance and audit, which I know was not as defined prior to you all coming on board. So if there's anything else you would like to brag about your good work, I really appreciate you all coming, joining us on board and
Closely.
running. So please, we've had the benefit of learning about it through the finance committee, but would love to hear would love for you to share anything additional with the board.
Well, we're working closely with finance to try to establish a foundation, because when we did come in and we audited student activity funds, myself and Mr. Parker noted that there were a lot of findings. There were a lot of issues, especially accounting procedures, safeguarding resources that we needed to work on. And so the manual will be considered their policies and procedures for handling student activity funds. So trainings are very, very important, which we have established training dates to actually go ahead and do trainings. I also spoke to finance about doing 2 trainings per year with the finance officers. One would be an actual in-person training. Because of COVID, we have to do it virtually this year. And another would be where they would go on to the computer and do like a simulation to learn information about student activity funds, or to get a refresher. So that in itself is very important. Training, working together, communicating across all aisles to get everything to to make everything a lot better. There is a lot of work that we have to do. So working collaboratively, I think will make, the findings go down tremendously.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Holloway. Ms.
You're welcome.
Burke, Page.
Is my time?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. My computer's acting a little up. Ms. Holloway and Mr. Parker, I'd like to thank you all so very much for, it's very evident that you've done a very intense audit. And this is most unacceptable. I look forward to your getting it right. The list is just unacceptable. It's not, I'm livid. So thank you for, number one, putting that in place. I think I know what happened. So I'm glad that your positions have been reinstated to allow us to keep up to date legally with what's expected. What my concern is, I'm glad to hear about the professional development, as Ms. Holloway stated, and that's a must. You stated for the new principals, the 7 new principals, but the old principals as well. It's always good to keep up to date with what's what. And as a principal, one professional development, I'm not trying to keep anybody else under the whatever, but we're, as principals, you're held accountable. You sign off on that document. That's very important. So professional development, especially with the finance officer together, makes a difference as well, because the principal needs to know what he or she is expecting to take place. So you have to inspect what you expect, but you can't do that if you don't have the ample background. I'm glad that you're going to update the paperwork, the guides as well, but so much goes on during the course of a school day, a school year, a school week. So I look forward to seeing an improvement here, because we're handling folk monies. My question is, for this school year, I guess we will pick up when we go back second semester, if we do go back second semester, because I know at the end of the school year, we shouldn't have any funds left in student activity fund. My question is regarding PTA and PTOs. You stated at one time it was the school did not house PTA or PTO money.
Correct.
Is that still correct?
They're not supposed to.
That's
Correct.
correct. That's correct. They're not supposed to have that money, and therefore the school shouldn't be held liable for those funds. I know when I was principal, we could not, it was up to the PTA as a separate nonprofit to keep their funds separate. Shouldn't be in the safe, shouldn't be on the school. That was between the treasurer and that board, I should say. So I just want us to be mindful of that legally. If anybody is keeping money we're not supposed to keep the money, that's just as bad as not giving ample receipts. So let's do it right all the way. And thank you also very much for what you're doing, and however I can support you as a board member, you know I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Ms. Page? You're on mute, Ms. Page.
My apologies. First, I just want to say to Mr. Parker and Ms. Holloway, thank you, thank you, thank you. A job well done. I know this has not been an easy task because dysfunction was eliminated in 2015, and this board reinstated dysfunction because this is the board's oversight. This is our oversight and our responsibility to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. The internal audit function, and I'm just preaching to the choir now, but this function demonstrates or it shows the strengths and the weaknesses of the school system. So I welcome
operationally or doing just a student activity fund, which is a financial audit, right? And then after that, we want to make sure we're moving in the right direction every time. So as a part of the 5-year strategic plans and things of that nature, to make sure that the school system is always on the grow and never taking a step back in that regard.
I agree with Mr. Parker. It's just working collaboratively with everyone. So.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to supporting you going forward, because again, audits are not a bad thing. It shows our strengths and our weaknesses, and we got to do better, and we will do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Cameras has a comment.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. I just wanted to thank Mr. Parker and Ms. Holloway. I know they have been working very, very hard on this initial audit, and I just so appreciate all the detail and most importantly, the training that will come hereafter to help our principals and other administrators, finance team, correct any of these errors and make sure we don't make any of them going forward. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, is making sure we identify whatever needs to be identified and addressed head on and fixed. And so again, just very grateful to the two of them, and look forward to continued work to make sure we're addressing everything that does need to be addressed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cameras. And Ms. Cosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I too want to echo the support and appreciation that my fellow colleagues have mentioned. I was trying to get in and out of the meeting, had a little bit of difficulty, and I missed one piece of it, Ms. Holloway. When you were talking earlier in the presentation before you got into the actual findings, and you mentioned something about those that bubbled up to a certain level required immediate correction or immediate steps to correct, right, to address. So the ones that were highlighted, those were the ones that bubbled up. I missed one portion of it, so.
Yes, if we deem a finding as a high level, that means that there's no compliance at all, or inadequate compliance with RPS policies and procedures. So right then we'll make the recommendation. We'll ask the principals to fix the errors that we've noted. And then at that moment, we go back to see. We don't wait, we go back to see if the errors have been corrected.
So you mentioned training, that moving forward, there's professional development and training for our officers at the school level, principals, et cetera. So of the issues, the non-compliant issues that you highlighted, so which ones were tagged for immediate, to be rectified immediately?
Accounting procedures are the biggest area of concern.
Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Cosby. And thank you both. Appreciate so much your time and energy with this. You're making us better all the time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to, do we have any board members reports on committee meetings or conferences? I tried to go to one and it was so terrible that I don't have a report. Some of these webinars, I don't know whether their connections are bad, but it's like, blah, 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 so I don't have a report. Anyone else? Okay.
Madam Chair, I
Then
can
we
speak.
will move on to, okay, Mr. Barlow.
Thank you. Just because it was brought up at the last meeting, we did discuss the issue of transportation and reopening at Maggie Walker. And I thought I would let everyone know that we're kind of in a holding pattern with both Maggie Walker and Code RVA at this point, seeing how the data plays out, and of course continuing to work with the different school districts to come up with a solution that makes sense. So I'll keep everyone in the loop on that. And then the other thing was, and this was publicized as well, is that the admissions test this year is at Maggie Walker is being suspended, and there will likely be further discussion and consideration of whether it is appropriate for use in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. And I know that, well, I'm pretty sure I speak for all of us when I say thank you for all you have been doing with this. Okay, now we'll move on to administration business. And we first receive a JCT update. Mr. Cameras.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. The update is fairly brief. The word is that by the end of next week, all of the remaining punch list items should be complete, and the certificate of occupancy ideally should be in hand. So I know the teams at the 3 schools are working very hard to make sure that they meet the deadline. I also want to note that at the Marsh site and at the Cardinal site, work has begun to assess the abatement process for the demolition of the existing structures. We have also asked the city representatives to help us identify at a ballpark level what the costs and timeline would be if the board wanted to proceed with the demolition of the Thompson building as well. And as soon as I have more of a firm update on that, I will share that. And then last, it appears at this point that there will be somewhere on the order of $4 to $5 million remaining in the new school construction fund from the original 150 million. And so I wanted to confer with the board at our last discussion of this many months ago. The next step in the process was to begin the work on the design of a new George Wythe High School. And I just wanted to reconfirm that that was the intention of the board. And if so, we would like to get to work on that front. And so it's very exciting to be thinking about the next set of schools, in particular a high school. And so I did want to just to pause and check in with the board, and assuming that is still the case, we will begin to get to work on that front.
Thank you, Mr. Camrus, Mr. Young, then Ms. Gibson, Ms. Dorr, Ms. Page.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my comment actually pertained to the preceding discussion, and just like Barlow, just wanted to share that Appomattox is continuing to deliberate relevant to reopening and anticipates a decision at the December meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Gibson.
Yes, my comment was in the prior agenda item too.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did
That's
not
fine.
get it in time. Ms. Dorr? Are you on the JCT?
I'm on JCT.
Okay.
I am certainly supportive of George Wythe, and I want to make sure that it's not just lip service to building a new George Wythe, that we have kind of a clear plan of action, because what I don't want to do is have us do A&E and then wait 5 years and say, like, celebrate that we're doing something, and then have us wait 5 years before we actually break ground on George Wythe. So maybe I would request two things. One is for this to be included as a topic on the next Education Compact meeting, to explore what the city might be prepared to pony up for in the second phase of RPS buildings. And secondly, I would love just a update on the accounting of kind of where we are with our capital maintenance budgets. I know that there's sometimes some confusion with City Council about, there's a perception, I feel like, that there's a lot of funds sitting around not being put to use. And so I think coming to the Education Compact meeting with just a full accounting, and maybe that takes some work on the front end with between RPS and the city, just whatever we can agree on that we believe is in our capital budget, and then a clear plan for moving forward. I know we've all talked about this, a lot. I think sort of related to that, there are some real serious capital maintenance dollars that we're going to need to expend as it relates to COVID. So I think that it should be put in the broader context of how do we think long-term, medium-term, short-term about George Wythe, but also really short-term about what our capital needs are, and how the city can support us in that. I know the city takes a critical eye at our budget, but in taking a critical eye at the city's budget, there are a lot of expenditures that I think personally could be reallocated to RPS. For example, I think we should be having conversations about, is a new sidewalk more imperative, or are new air ventilating systems for RPS schools more imperative? And so all the preamble aside, in conclusion, my request is that we, one, get alignment between city and RPS about what the full accounting is. Two, we state our priorities as it relates to George Wythe and how the city can support us there. And three, we have a clear understanding of what's needed from a capital improvement perspective as it relates to return to school, whether that be next this next semester or summer or any other time. We know that we're going to need to update our HVAC as one example.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dorr. Ms. Page, then Mr. Barlow.
Thank you. I just want to echo some of the comments that my colleague Ms. Dorr made, but I fully support moving forward with the design work for George Wythe High School, because that's a commitment that we made, and I want to fulfill that commitment. But also, I know there's a design work takes about maybe a year or two. That's not my expertise, but just kind of going off of memory. But I too would like to see, I don't want to just say we have the design work completed and there's no plan of action to actually start the work of building a new school. So yes, I would like to see that as well. You know, how can we move forward in receiving that information? And also, yes, the capital improvement project maintenance budget. You know, what's the status? Because I know at one time we were meeting with the city to make sure that we are reconciling the city side versus the school side, because I think that is so critical, because as we all know, we are playing catch up when it comes to our capital improvement maintenance budget. So yeah, we need to be realistic and be able to provide the most critical needs that need to be addressed. And again, what's the status of the reconciliation? Because I know we're making progress towards that, but just want to make sure that everything is still in alignment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Page. Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree with a lot of the sentiments that I've heard from Ms. Dorr and Ms. Page at this point. I definitely want to make sure that we're taking a close look at our capital budget before completely committing to doing the design work, which is not to say that I want to delay construction of George Wythe or anything along those lines. I know that George Wythe is a school that is a top priority for us to address. And that much has been made clear. And I know that we've had a lot of discussions about over the past couple of years, and I can see Ms. Owen turning red already. But I know that we've had some discussions over the past couple of years about how to best kick off that process. And of course, I think it's important for us to have the funds in hand. The other thing that I would encourage us to do as a board, and I'm not necessarily calling for a complete revamp of the facilities plan, but I do think that it's time for us, and it will be time for us, at least in the coming year, to take a closer look at it, see if any updates need to be made, account for any facilities improvements that have been made over the past couple of years, and sort of have a clearer understanding as a board, certainly heading into a newer term of where all the facilities stand and whether any potential adjustments need to be made. I know it's a living document of sorts, and it was passed a couple of years ago, so it's probably appropriate for us to take a closer look.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barlow. Mr. Camrus.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. Mr. Barlow took some of the words right out of my mouth. I do think one of the projects that we do need to undertake over the next year is coming off of rezoning. We had always talked about updating our facilities plan based on that. Obviously with COVID, there were other pressing priorities, but I would hope over the next year that that is something that we can tackle and update, make sure that the numbers in terms of cost are updated to reflect current realities, as well as other prioritizations. We had also discussed over the long term, likely needing one, if not two additional elementary schools on the south side. So there are a number of things that we certainly do need to update in that plan for the next decade or more. In addition, I do want to note that we are working closely with the city and continue to always keep our books reconciled. We are now in the process of working with them to reconcile from the first quarter, which concluded on September 30th. So that takes a little bit of time. But as soon as we have those fully reconciled, I'm glad to come back to the board and do a full accounting of our CIP balances, not just for new construction, but for maintenance and ADA and the other accounts that we have with them, so that the board is fully informed as to where things stand. Particularly to Ms. Doerr's point, as we prepare for a return, whether that's in February or in August or next fall, whatever the case may be, as we work through some of the facility matters that we want to address to make sure our school environment is as healthy as it possibly can be for our students.
Thank you, Mr. Camrus. Moving right along. I dropped my agenda. Okay, so now we would like to receive a solar update. I believe we have someone who is visiting us to share this with us.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Owen. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen very quickly. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ryan McAllister. I am the acting CEO of Secure Futures. So thanks for wanted to thank y'all for making time for us to discuss a potential phase 2 solar installation. I think we've been pretty pleased with phase 1. RBS actually has the largest installed solar array across a public K-12 school district in the Commonwealth. So we want to build on that success for a phase 2 and also offer a plan for a phase 3. So nothing's changed about the way these are built. No upfront capital from the schools, no debt, no ongoing operations and maintenance expense or responsibility. The performance of the system is contractually guaranteed. One date is that we are now offering roofing solutions to go with solar where appropriate. For phase 2, that wouldn't be necessary, as we are focusing on the 3 new builds: River City Middle, Henry Marsh, and Cardinal Elementary. So an overall installed scope of about 200 kilowatts, a little bit slimmer than phase 1, which was 3 megawatts. But we are able to see still some immediate upfront net operational savings. A little bit less than $3,000 in year 1, rising to just under $600,000 over the life of the array. Now, this is based on a PPA rate of 9 cents per kilowatt hour, as compared with an avoided cost of electricity from the grid at 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour. Did want to take a second to give you a sense of where this project would fit within the overall Virginia market for solar. So have a list of comps on the screen that you see there of projects of a similar scope and type. You'll notice 2 tranches there. The first one at the top represent projects contracted and installed prior to 2020, and the bottom represent projects proposed, offered, or contracted in 2020. The difference is, up until last year, the federal tax credits available for these projects were at 30%. Starting in 2020, those tax credits stepped down to 26%. And so we saw some resulting increases across the market for solar PPAs. At the end of 2020, those tax credits are again set to step down to 22%. Before stepping down to 10% in 2022. So that is among the reasons we wanted to, at the same time tonight, discuss for safe harboring these 3 of solar projects under the more favorable 2020 tax schedule. And so we settled on the schools listed on the screen, and those were in part because they're a great they're great candidates for solar, but also because they were identified to us by Bobby Hathaway, the facilities manager, as locations that were likely to need roof replacement within the next 3 to 5 years. As I mentioned, we have begun offering roof restoration options with our solar projects where appropriate. Our roof restoration option is a silicone coating, which can be applied over top of an existing roof, removing the need to tear off, landfill, and replace the roof altogether, and instead getting a 25-year warranty backed by the Carlisle Roofing Corporation at a fraction of the cost of a tear off and replacement. Under this scenario, Secure Futures would also finance the costs of the roof restoration, allowing the schools to pay that off for 15 years out of their operating budget, freeing up the capital cost of roof replacement and allowing that money to be applied to other projects around the district. So here would be a rough timeline of what it would take to get phase 2 and phase 3 safe harbored again under the more favorable economic conditions. Not obviously seeking any board action tonight, but we are proposing a consideration for approval of phase 2 at the November 2nd board meeting, with a plan for action on phase 3 in December. And that would allow us time to put together a proposal and some savings estimates on those locations discussed previously. We've already started, or we will start rather tomorrow morning, the inspection process on those locations to determine if they're suitable for roof restoration. Assuming at this point, based on the roof conditions, typically what we see is about half of them are able to take a restoration coating. And so running some rough numbers, RPS would likely see $1 to $2 million in capital savings from the avoided cost of a roof replacement. So that's what we've got. Would love to hear any questions or anything anybody would like clarified.
All right, well, Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. McAllister. So I've got a couple questions for you. One is with respect to these tax credits that appear to be dropping over the next few years. So taking action alone this calendar year means that we could take advantage. By taking action, I mean the board voting alone would mean that we can take advantage of these tax credits, or can you explain how that plays out?
We would need to be contracted in this year, and then we would need to demonstrate that we had begun the process of installation. So basically the way we do that is to install the inverters for the system at each school, just meaning we deliver them on site prior to December 31st.
Okay, that's helpful to know. And then it's a lot to ask anyone to predict what's going to happen in this political climate, but have you heard grumblings or any discussion through the work that you do about whether, one party coming out on top over another in this next election may impact this type of investment?
Sure. Well, under the current administration at the federal level, we are in the sunset years of these tax credits. And so we would, if there were to be a continuation, we would expect sort of no change in the environment. If there were to be a change in administration involving a full blue wave, as it were, Vice President Biden has expressed a desire to expand and extend the tax credits. That would require an act of Congress. So we're prepared to act without that. If we do find ourselves in a situation where they have reverted to the 30% level, just a note on the way our process works is we make a profit by monetizing those tax credits and then passing the savings on to tax exempt entities. So if there were an expansion of them or a reversion to 30%, it would be in our mutual financial interest to amend any agreement that we had reached in December. So we'd be able to show the schools more savings, and it would be a better business decision for us. So our interests would be aligned.
Excellent. Good to hear. Thank you. I appreciate the update.
Yep.
Thank you. And Ms. Dorr and then Ms. Page.
Hi, thanks. And thanks for your work. Super excited to see phase 2 and phase 3 brought before us. One suggestion, just to reduce your time, I think I would suggest that we vote on phase 2 and phase 3 on November 2nd, rather than making you come back to 2 meetings. So to the extent the board is ready for that, either yay or nay. Or we vote on phase 2 and 3 on December 7th if folks need more time, but just doesn't seem like we need several updates on there. So that's one suggestion. Obviously, this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. Was super excited to support the first phase. I was curious if as with the first phase, we were able to receive some funding in the form of a grant from the Community Foundation. I was wondering if there were any additional community resources available to support this program. And if so, if you could point us in the right direction so we can take advantage of that. And my second question is related to the roof analysis. So super excited to see Mary Mumford on there, but I know Ms. Jacobs at Fox has been clamoring for a new roof, and I'm sure many other school boards have principals that need roof enhancements. So could you talk us through what makes a good candidate for a roof replacement, and if there is an opportunity to potentially include any additional roofs as part of that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll address the roofing question first. So a good candidate for a roof is one that is near the end of its usable life, but hasn't been damaged too much. Most importantly, one that doesn't have any moisture inside of it, because we don't want to put the coating over top of a roof that has moisture in, which would then just seal all that moisture in it. So we typically restore flat roofs that are, as I said, near the end of their usable life, near the end of their warranty, and have sort of passed an inspection and don't show too much damage. Unfortunately, it's sort of one of those where you kind of have to get up on the roof and see it, and then sometimes do an infrared scan as well to confirm that there's no moisture internal on the roof. Would be happy to consider any additional locations. Yeah, did you have a follow-up there? Or, yeah.
Yeah, I would, to the extent it's at no cost to the district, I would welcome a further analysis on how we could include more roofs as part of this. So I will defer to our chair and vice chair about next steps there, but that's my personal opinion there.
Sure, and we have our roofing contractor who will be in Richmond tomorrow. I believe they're starting at Mary Mumford and going around to the phase 3 locations. I can reach out to Bobby Hathaway and our guy and see if they can include Fox in that as well.
I was just told that Fox has received a new roof, so we're good there.
Okay, good. Scratch that. And with respect to your first question, in terms of additional funding, that was the result of a partnership that Secure Futures developed for the RVA Solar Fund with the Community Foundation. That fund has come to an end. We are not at the moment aware of any other outside funds that would be available for this. So Tony, if you're on, if you wanted to speak to that more, or.
I think you're correct, Ryan. I think that was a one-time initiative with the foundation. They're now focusing more aggressively on energy efficiency than solar, because they feel like they did a really good thing with RPS. And however, we're always open to suggestions. If Liz, if you hear of any sources that we could apply towards for this, we'd welcome working with you again on that.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Page and then Ms. Gibson.
Yes, thank you for this information. So my question is, do we have any baseline data on the projects that have already been installed? Because I know one of the schools in my district, Blackwell, has benefited from this project as well as other schools. So do we have any baseline data as far as cost savings yet, or is it too soon?
It's very early on in the project or in the systems, and additionally, the usage is somewhat irregular because the schools haven't been occupied. We do have a little bit of information, which I'd be happy to share with the board the next time.
Please. I think that will be helpful.
Yes,
as far as our decision making.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would note this is not quite parallel to savings, but in terms of educational achievements, the students at Open High that participated in the project-based learning with Secure Futures and with the Virginia Science Museum did a stellar presentation at the Science Museum last December, and in fact caught the attention of the U.S. Department of Energy and have been invited to present at the U.S. Department of Energy Solar Decathlon this year, unfortunately by webinar, but it's going to be a really high honor for them to present, and that'll be happening in December this year.
Yes, and so just one more comment. So I'm excited too about the learning opportunity for our students, but I just thought that information also will be helpful going forward. But the opportunities, the learning opportunities, I know it's just amazing in the hands-on. So thank you.
Yeah, we didn't want to burden teachers this fall, given the crazy pandemic situation with additional curriculum opportunities, but hopefully things will settle down next year. We can do a phase 2 with the
Ms.
educational
Gibson.
program.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms.
Thank you.
Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question in terms of the contract, and I apologize if this was discussed, but so how long is our contract with Secure Futures lasting until? And I wonder, as I know that there are also other organizations that do this type of work, and I just want to make sure that we are, that the process has been competitive. And I would lean towards, having a bit more time to make the decision about the roofs as well, just so,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a kind of a creative tension between wanting to make sure you have as wide a procurement process as possible and balance that against the fast-moving clock with the investment tax credit. And it took quite a bit of time to work through the contracts just because of their inherent complexity. What we always strive to do is offer as best as possible comparable savings and benefits as we have done in the past. And we obviously, because of the change in the tax credit, that had some slight effect. But there is a time crunch as far as trying to lock in the safe harbor, the tax credit savings to benefit the schools this year. So I don't know how to resolve that creative tension as you're suggesting.
just to follow up. So if someone could speak to the length of the contract that we have with Secure Futures.
These would be 25-year power purchase contracts. they would be project agreements for each school that we would put the solar on. And by amortizing it over 25 years, we can essentially offer all the maintenance and performance guarantees over a 25-year period. So the schools don't incur any operating costs, nor do they have any risk in terms of performance, because you only pay for what the solar panels produce. And 25 years is now pretty much the industry standard. We don't like to go beyond 25 years.
Okay. Mr. Young has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question pertains to specifically if, Ryan, if you can identify what that tax credit variance looks like in regards to the dollars per year. So we've had a discussion about 30 versus, I think reference 26, but then 22. What is that? What does that actually? Can you actually assign some numbers to that so we have some idea of what we're talking about?
So I can speak both to what it represents to us and what we're seeing across the broader market. What we're seeing internally in our models of these systems is that removing that 4% of tax credit, because of the way these things are financed, that tends to have a bit of an outsized impact on the overall project financing. And so we're seeing increases at the end level, meaning the PPA rate of anywhere from 6 to 10% for that 4%. That's for us internally. That's a little bit lower than we're seeing around the market, meaning our competitors that we're seeing around the market are seeing higher jumps in their overall pricing based on that. So anywhere from 10 to 12%. And that would be an increase in the PPA rate paid by the schools. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I got.
Yes, sir. That's very, very helpful. And with the blessing of the chair, since I've got the mic, may I ask another question?
Yes, Mr. Young.
Thank you. The second question would pertain to the phase 3, for lack of a better description, and for what it's worth, and this is more relevant perhaps for my colleagues, but I would welcome additional opportunity to review that proposal, and I'm sure that November 2nd is candidly that practical to do that. But that said, can you speak to what your portfolio of work looks like, either in the region or in other states, specifically with the roof replacement? Obviously, we're very familiar with the installation of the solar, but the roof part. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have so far partnered with 3 other public school districts in Virginia on the roof restoration process. The first was with Augusta County. That was a phase 2 with them. So we have restored those roofs, and we are in the process of installing their solar arrays on top of it. Additionally, we're partnering with Orange County Public Schools. Similarly, we finished the restoration process and are now installing the solar. And last week, we reached agreement with Waynesboro Public Schools for, again, a phase 2 repeat business on to restore 2 of their roofs and install solar on top of both of those. So RPS would be the 4th school district in Virginia that we will have applied this model to, and will be the 3rd school district for it to be a repeat business.
Okay, thank you. I would, I see no other in the chat, but Mr. McAllister, Mr. Smith, I think it might be helpful if this presentation would to be made available to us so
Absolutely.
that we would have that list of schools and some of the numbers to ponder.
Mhm.
Okay,
Absolutely.
can you do
Yeah.
that? All right, thank
Yeah,
you.
I believe it's on the website, but I'd be happy to send it out or whatever is the easiest.
Yeah, if you share it with Mr. Cameras or Ms. Udesco, they can share it with us.
Okay.
All right.
Will
Thank
do.
you both for being here and doing
Yeah.
this presentation, and thank you for all those new solar arrays we have sitting
Yeah.
up on so many of our school roofs. We appreciate that so much.
Sure.
We love it when the sun shines.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do too.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, and now I think this is Ms. Udasco, the update on health and safety enhancements for our facilities.
Yes, thank you. Jason, do you mind sharing your screen? So tonight I'm going to briefly walk through some of the health and safety enhancements that we've made in the last 2 months, both for the limited in-person interactions that may be happening in buildings right now, including families coming to pick up academic materials or technology or enrollment type things, plus thinking ahead towards an eventual return to in-person instruction. So I want to start first with some of our efforts around public awareness and access to PPE. So one of our primary efforts in this area has been around signage. So we have nearly completed installation of safety signage. So you'll see the far left picture. We have signs around flags to see if you're not feeling well. We have signs around wearing masks. We have signs around social distancing. All of those are posted in easels or up, as well as you'll see the far right picture. The social distancing floor decals are also in place. And so this is at Huguenot, and you can see them spaced out to enter the main office there. We've also, as depicted in the middle picture, have completed the physical distancing signs on the exterior of our buses, which are reminders around physical distancing when picking up meals, as well as generally. According to the Department of Labor, we were required to present all staff with a COVID-related safety webinar that went out a couple of weeks ago. We're at nearly 85% completion, and of course, we'll continue to drive towards 100% completion. And we have provided PPE kits to all schools and central offices in the main office space. These kits include disposable masks, additional hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, and gloves that are available. In addition, all of our school buses have disposable masks for community members as they come to pick up meals. If you move to the next slide, I want to highlight a couple of our facility enhancements. So the photo you'll see on the left are one of our new temperature check machines. So these can take 70 temperatures per minute. And so certainly if and when we're coming back to school, this will help with efficiency versus a handheld forehead thermometer, which also has an up to 15-second reset between each temperature. We knew that for large schools, we couldn't have kids waiting in a line that long to have symptom checks. So these are being installed. This one here is at MLK. Most schools will receive one, some will receive two based on school enrollment. And of course, we can continue to reevaluate that. In the picture on the right, you'll see, and this is at Huguenot as well, we have installed wall-mounted hand sanitizer dispensers in all common areas, and now finishing up the last classrooms. So those will be ready for when we come back to school. Deep cleaning of all the school buildings is nearly complete. There are 3 buildings that are being finished up this week. And every school front office, as well as all central office front desks, now have plexiglass barriers. As we think about some of the other buckets for nursing, as you know, we funded 6 new nurses through the CARES dollars, and I'm pleased to share that 4 of those 6 nurses now are on RPS staff and supporting our efforts right now. And interviews continue for the 2 remaining positions. Our nurses are working very closely with the Richmond City Health Department on contact tracking. We call it tracking, they call it tracing. That's just a nomenclature difference, as well as receiving COVID-related professional development from the health department, as well as other health-related PD in preparation for an in-person return. And all nursing suite supplies are now on hand and being stocked. So I'm pleased that the board's investment to fully stock our nursing suites is coming to fruition. We have N95 masks, barrier gowns, protective eyewear, gloves, disinfecting wipes, cot paper, in addition, of course, to all of the regular supplies that would be needed in a fully functional nursing suite. In terms of 2 other facilities related items, the first is bathrooms. And so we are going through all of the bathrooms again. Obviously, we've done this before through the bathroom blitz to rank them level 1, 2, or 3. Level 1 is just confirming that sinks and toilets are fully functional, stall doors locked, and soap and paper towel dispensers are operational. This is the basic bar that we had before with the bathroom blitz. Level 2, we want to ensure bathrooms are meeting the level 1 bar plus are aesthetically pleasing. So this might include things like all bathrooms getting fresh paint of school colors, ensuring there aren't water stains or broken tiles, things of that nature. And then level 3 is that level 2 bar plus some of the inspirational decals or things, murals and such that we know are in some of our bathrooms now and just look great. We'll complete this final assessment of our bathrooms, I'd say in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll be able to provide an update to the board across these 3 levels. We're fortunate that the state provided additional funding through what's called the Coronavirus Relief Funds, or CRF. Richmond received a little over $4 million. And so since we had already allocated out all of our CARES dollars, we're now able to use this new CRF funding to help address bathrooms. The second piece that we'll be doing is completing an assessment of air quality in all of our buildings. And that may mean things from a systems evaluation, which is inspecting equipment, systems and controls, ensuring that the HVAC systems function appropriately, looking at ventilation and filtration, and determining a building readiness plan for each one of our buildings. We will complete that as well in the next 3 weeks or so and update the board. And again, we will use the CRF funds from the state to help address additional needs. Based on those assessments, we'll of course be able to determine if additional funding above and beyond the CRF is necessary to meet safety standards.
Thank you very much, Ms. Udesco. I want you to know that I took the online COVID thing and I passed.
Good.
I don't see, here we go. Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Udasco, for that update. I think it's really helpful to understand what we are doing to physically prepare our buildings, our facilities for a potential return. So having the bathrooms ranked and the air quality done by early November seems to be ambitious, which is good. So I assume some of that work's already underway.
Yes, it had been underway.
Okay. Well, then the air quality thing in particular, I think this is a well-noted issue throughout our school buildings and RPS. I mean, there are mold concerns. There are, all types of concerns that you hear from different schools. And I know that some effort has been put into updating our HVAC systems over the past few years. But I am curious to know, are we working with the likes of France Environmental to do these tests? Like how exactly does that work?
At the highest, well, let me first acknowledge that I'm not an expert in HVAC, so I will probably take some of these questions back to Bobby Hathaway and his team who are. But I know that we are looking at each school, even things like, for example, a school like Armstrong, while it may be an older facility, for example, they have a new air conditioner chiller. So, or Franklin Military, again, an older facility with good air conditioning. So we are able to tier different buildings with some of the upgrades that we've been able to do through CIP. Based on what type of HVAC system the school has, and this is where I won't get into details today, but I'll bring Bobby with me when we have the full assessment. There are different interventions around air purification, ventilation, things like that, that you can do based on different types of systems that are in the building.
Okay.
But I don't think that it will be, oh, Bobby's texting me, hopefully telling me something good. We are currently looking to incorporate the bipolar ionization. Yes, that's something that I know that Jason has shared with us before, but I do know it's only applicable in certain buildings that have certain types of systems in place already.
Okay. Well, I look forward to that update. I think this is an incredibly important piece of the puzzle with respect to any notions of an in-person return. And I will say there have been a number of situations over the past really 4 years where there have been air quality issues, I guess, anecdotally reported by staff or students or teachers that didn't necessarily show up through whatever testing approaches that we were using. So I do want to make sure that we're as thorough as possible when we're going through this, because I just don't think we can afford to have any mistakes or issues. But I know we're hard at work at it, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Burke, and then Ms. Cosby.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Hadasco. Well done, well done, well done. As we discussed last school year, I would really like to see at some point per school in regards to what's in place. For instance, you stated the bathroom blitz. We didn't talk about the kitchen area, which is another common area, the cafeteria area. I'd like to hear all about the cleaning pieces there as well, whether there are, what's put in place. But at some point, I'd like to see for each school a checklist or some instrument. And we talked about this last year, not knowing we would be in this circumstance this year, but now it's even more important, because as we put all these apparatus or whatever in place for hand sanitizer and whatever else, and paper towels and whatever, soap dispensers, whatever, we don't want to run out. So I would like to see because you know I'm gonna go around the 7th district and see for myself, but I would like to see in place where we are when you and Mr. Hathaway come back and give us a full report per school. General information overall, this is perfect, wonderful. But school by school, there will be some differences. So I don't want to walk into a school thinking I'm gonna see something because I saw it in the report and it's still a work in progress. So I would like to know beforehand. So if we can have that in place as well, school by school, that would be of great help.
By the November 16th board meeting, we should have a comprehensive list that both works through the bathroom and the air quality by school.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cosby?
Thank you. As has been noted.
Oh dear.
I'm sorry, I'm losing Ms. Cosby a bit there.
There she is.
Ah, okay. Yes.
You were frozen for a moment, Ms. Cosby. So start again, please.
Okay. Thank you to the administration for this report. As it pertains to our facilities, I am very much concerned, however, and I would like to see in our next meeting, protocols that we have in place. So we're putting the actual physical things in place to ensure as much as possible our student and staff safety. But what other protocols do we have in place to ensure student and staff safety, one, and second, if there is an outbreak or if people do contract COVID-19, what are we doing? You know, as we have noted earlier, and so unfortunately, and with sorrow, you know, we have had an incident, a death. And so from that, what were protocols that were put in place after finding out about that situation? What have we done to make sure that our transportation staff members, people who work in transportation, are safe?
And I have that, thank you. I've put in the chat, and it's on our website, our health and safety protocols that continue to be what all staff members who have any in-person interaction are responsible for. And that was also part of the webinar that all staff received. If and when we return to school, however, we will do more, and the things will be more aligned to the presentation that we did back in July around broader things, which might include schedule adjustments for hand washing, instruction around such things like that. There also is, and Sandra Lee can share with the board via email. We do also have guidance that has been shared with all staff on what to do if you have a potential exposure, what to do if you are tested positive, how to return to work and the related protocols, as well as specific guidance for supervisors. And we're happy to circulate that to the group as well.
So I'm sorry, a follow-up. So let me ask you this. In regards to our transportation department, so have we done anything? What did we do differently since we've had an employee who died of a COVID-related death? So what do we do differently?
Two things were done differently, and I'll also allow Sade and Sandra to build on that. The first is we made a intentional shift to full contactless meal pickup. So now meals are placed outside the bus on a table, chair, crate, something like that, for families to come up and pick them up. In the past, there had been a handoff of the meal, and while there was no potential exposure with any one person for more than 10 to 15 minutes, there was repeated interaction, and potentially you could have touched another individual's hand and then touched your face. So there is now only contactless meal. All buses now also have masks, and community members before were encouraged to wear masks for meal pickup. Now mask wearing is required for pickup. And so that also gives us the opportunity to share health and safety information with the community and distribute masks to the community at that time. Sade or Sandra, I'll allow you to add anything else that I didn't mention about food, nutrition, and transportation.
The only thing I would add is just increasing just our signage on our vehicles. So again, making sure on our buses we have all of the signage about our mask wearing as well as social distancing. We've added signage to our pickup spots as well, and when we're actually distributing. So again, as visuals, language, just enhanced all of that. We also have partnered with the Richmond Health Department so that when we're doing community walks in areas that have been identified as needing more support, they're helping us provide masks in those areas, not just during distribution, but during that whole 7 to 9 window, we're in those areas. You may have seen that in today's RPS Direct on a couple more areas that have been identified for the city that need support. So again, just continuing to partner as well with our health department to increase community usage of those safety procedures and PPEs.
Okay. Do we have protocols in place? And so if we have one area of the operational area of our district, whereas we've had more than one person exposed, do we have structures in place whereas people can work who are currently in offices right now, they can work remotely? And when do we make that determination?
That determination was provided to all staff on June 22nd when we returned full-time. Any staff member at any time, however, can opt out of either in-person work or work that requires human interaction. So all transportation and food and nutrition workers have been given that option, and many now are choosing to do other things and supporting, for example, our Connect RPS strategy, making phone calls to families if they felt that they would be more comfortable not delivering the meal. So that remains an option for every employee.
The other thing that I would also like to add is that through our contact tracing, contact tracking, we also have reason to believe that most of the transportation infection is happening outside of work. Several of our employees have multiple jobs in addition to RPS. And just want to name that as well, that's something that, we have continued to note, but seeing and just making sure that we're attending to some of the themes that we're noticing in places, Ms. Cosby, where we are having more than like one case.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gibson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that I have a couple of questions. One, I would like to get some clarity on, we were talking in the spring, we said that we would pay all of our drivers, all of our hourly staff members their full salaries, if they were not going into work. And so I wanted to find out if that practice has continued. My assumption was that it had. And then I also know that we had said that if any employees did not feel comfortable working in person, that they would not be required to. So I'm wanting to understand how those things come together with our bus drivers specifically. I understand that it's possible that the infection may have started, at another position, but that, that's like neither here nor there. That's how these things spread, and if we have employees that likely do have multiple jobs, then it is even more incumbent upon us to ensure that we are keeping people safe, Likewise, how is that working with principals? Like, I just want to understand, because we made a promise that nobody would have to go into work. So I want to understand how we have, stayed true to that promise. And then the other piece I wanted to ask was just actually about our operations position. Since there is a vacancy, that's a really critical role for us, particularly right now in this moment in time. I think I would like for the board to consider, how that position is structured, perhaps considering, splitting the finance from the operations piece. So I just would like to also get an update for the board from the administration on that. So the questions are, because I asked a bunch, regarding the salary, regarding pay for hourly workers, regarding our promise for not requiring folks to come in person to work if they did not feel comfortable, and then also the status update on the operations position.
Sure. I can go through those three. For the first, all contracted employees are receiving their full pay as shared. I'm not sure if there's any additional data you needed or detail beyond what I had just shared with Ms. Cosby about the promise of not working and how we've moved staff around. Was there a part of that you wanted additional clarity on?
So, so back to the pay. So that means that everyone, because it had been, I'd seen that some employees are being told that if they're not coming in person to work, that they're only receiving perhaps 2/3 of what they had been paid in the past. And I want to make sure that there's 100% clarity on that.
Yep. So that's a separate policy. That's the federal leave, where if you go on leave for coronavirus, like caring for sick parents, or if you take leave because of RPS being virtual, that pay is 2/3 pay. But that's not working from home. That's if you're not working. That's a form basically of FMLA. If an individual does not wish to work in person, they don't need to. We can either rearrange their schedule such that they are not having human interaction, or if they prefer to fully work from home. That's what I had been sharing with Ms. Cosby about the Connect RPS strategy. So we do have staff who now are doing phone calls to kids and helping them get logged on in the morning or at transition points, or helping on the general support line or tech line. Most of those tasks are turning into kind of calling tasks. And so we've gotten all of those folks a cell phone. And then in terms of the Chief Operating Officer position, we have 50 applications. We sent out performance tasks about a month or so ago, and last week kicked off first round interviews with folks who had a successful performance task. We've had about 11 interviews so far, and we've got about another 10 or so next week. And then we'll be moving candidates through the next 2 stages of the selection process, hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Assuming we have the right candidate in the pool, we're hopeful to make an offer before Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I'm still unclear though, going back to the salary piece. So I understand that there's a federal program that provides 2/3 pay. But that's separate. I mean, my understanding though is that we as a district promised that our hourly staff would be paid 100%. And so, I want to understand how those things reconcile. And if there are, have our drivers that have decided that they don't feel comfortable going to work, especially considering that there have been a number of infections, have they been given the option of some alternate employment that they can be doing from home? So
to draw the very, very clear line, if you're not working and you're on leave, then that's where that 2/3 pay is coming in as a form of FMLA. If you are working, you're getting 100% pay, and you have the option to do something else, Connect RPS or other phone opportunities that do not require you to be in person.
And every transportation staff, as well as food service staff, has had that opportunity. And that virtual opportunity has been made aware, not only prior to them starting, but we also, as of recently, over the past couple of weeks, have done mini trainings, again, going over all safety procedures, and also made it clear of that option again for people. So again, reinforcing that everyone does have that option to work virtually. So we've not just done that in the beginning, but have done that recently as well to every single person employed.
So yeah, I would like to request that we have an upcoming conversation just to check in again on the budget. Because if we are, pulling money from these different sources, and I just think it would be helpful to get to see, where we're at now, given, giving the additional funding sources. And I will say that from my perspective, I would really right now our drivers are on the front line, and there are other organizations that talk about hazard pay. And so, I'm thankful that there is some source of income for drivers or that don't feel comfortable, but I feel that, especially given that these are some of the folks that are lowest paid in the district, that that this 2/3, given that they may be fearful, given the infections, somehow I'd hope that we could do a bit better.
Kenya, I do want to make clear again, those are people that are on leave. So there isn't anything that we could do better in that case. They have chosen to go on leave. If someone is working, we pay them 100% of their salary and offer them the option of remote work. So I want to make sure that message is very clear.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Barlow has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was actually the point that I was hoping to drill down to as well, but Ms. Gibson handled it.
Okay, thank you. I do not see any other questions at this time. So thank you, Ms. Udasco.
Thank you.
Wait.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I couldn't type it in quick enough.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Cosby.
Oh. Okay. I just want to say clearly, with this issue, Ms. Hidasco, and I hear what you're saying, that there is a difference, and perhaps internally, we just need to make sure that that is articulated yet again, so that, people understand, hey, if you're in this segment, FMLA or whatever, this is the pay rate. And then if you are working 100%, you get 100%. Clearly there is a some type of breakdown in communication. So I just ask that it just be reiterated again with our staff.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I see nothing further, so we will move on to 5.04, receive an update on the MOU.
Thank you, Ms. Owen. We had our quarterly CAP meeting about a week or so ago. It was very successful meeting. In fact, the state was so pleased with some of our financial practices that they have actually relieved us of some of the requirements in terms of paperwork that we have to submit. So we were thrilled to be able to make that progress. But there were also a lot of positive points from the academic side and other areas as well. So we are cautiously optimistic that things continue to move in the right direction. We're grateful to Dr. Ortiz, who's the new head of the Office of School Quality. Her leadership and partnership has been very helpful in striking a very collaborative and positive relationship going forward. I will note this Thursday, we have our biannual meeting with State Superintendent Lane and State Board President Gecker, and of course, our chair and vice chair. The meeting is open to all board members, and it'll be an opportunity for us just to discuss the latest updates. We'll likely review some of the highlights from our last quarterly CAP meeting, provide an opportunity for folks to ask questions and get some additional information, and we look forward to seeing folks there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Camrus. Seeing no questions or comments, we will move on to 5.05, receive an attendance update and first read of policy revision. I think this is Mr. Hughes.
That's correct. Good evening, Madam Chair Owen, Madam Vice Chair Burke, school board members, and Superintendent Camrus. Superintendent Camrus, can you please pull up the draft of the student attendance and absences policy and scroll to the bottom of page 2 for me. Tonight, the administration brings forth a proposed revision to policy 8-2.4, student attendance and absences for first read. Currently in the section of this policy titled excused absences, the language states that parents and guardians are required to provide a note requesting that the days absent be considered excused absences within 5 school days of the last day of school missed. If a note for the days absent is not provided within 5 school days of the last day of school missed, the period of absences will be considered unexcused. We are requesting that the policy is updated to expand the methods by which parents or guardians may submit a request for excused absences to also include email, phone calls, and text messages. We will need to add phone calls and text messages into the draft document. The policy is also updated to add language allowing appropriate division staff the ability to waive the 5-day time frame in which parents or guardians are required to request consideration for excused absences. You can find these changes outlined on board docs. We believe that this change is needed because it provides parental flexibility in 2 ways. First, it acknowledges the multiple ways that we, in our day-to-day ways of communicating with each other, the same ways we should expect families to communicate with school personnel through handwritten notes, emails, phone calls, and text messages. Second, it acknowledges that families are busy and also facing hardships, which can mean that sometimes things don't happen in as timely a manner as we might like. However, the bottom line is, if an absence is legitimately excused because of illness, passing of a relative, etc., it's excused regardless of when the parent tells us. I want to thank you all in advance for your engagement in the first read of this proposed modification of language to our student attendance and absences policy. I'll pause there for questions.
I don't see any questions.
All right, fantastic. So I'll move forward. Now, Superintendent Cameras, can you please pull up the attendance deck?
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Ms. Gibson, I thought that was the one before.
Thank you. I was wondering if we have a sense of, how much this might impact attendance numbers, what feedback that we've gotten that led to making the change, where we're, why the 5 days. And I also wonder, as a parent, I think part of it is how can we make the process of reporting absences easier? I don't know that everyone has access to email, what is a way that what is something that we can do operational to make it easier to report absences, like having to require a doctor's note. I never take my kids to the doctor and the doctor says, by the way, do we want me to get you a letter so you have an excused absence? Like, that's not a thing. The doctor never offers it. So I just want to have a conversation about, how can we make it easy? I understand the policy change, but I also feel like, it's a pain, so what can we do?
Well, I believe that the proposed language makes it easier for parents to excuse absences, as it gives them more methods to excuse those absences, including a phone call, as well as when our social workers and family liaisons engage parents in 5-day and 10-day meetings about unexcused absences. Those social workers and family liaisons, which are deemed as attendance officers by the state, will also have the ability to excuse those absences with parents' verification that it was indeed an excused absence. To answer the first part of your question, currently we have, with the absences that we have, 90% of those absences are currently coded as unexcused. We know that that number is not correct. I mean, while we don't have 90% of our absences excused, we need to find a balance there. And we clearly know that the number of unexcused absences so far is way too high.
So I wonder from a policy standpoint, how do our attendances compare to our peer districts, such as Norfolk? Have our absences been much higher? And I wonder, what is the policy that those other districts have in place, both with our neighboring districts and the peer districts, in terms of how absences are reported and the policy parameters?
We have not felt the need to engage in this type of comparison as to date.
I think that would be helpful. So I'd like to request that.
Mr. Young?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, first, I would concur with Ms. Gibson's request of the board and administration in regards to the comparison data. But second, I'll reserve my question for after what I anticipate we'll discuss next. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hughes?
All right, thank you. Superintendent Cameras, can you please pull up the attendance deck? At this time, I'll provide the school board an update on our attendance. Specifically, we'll look at current chronic absenteeism rates by comparing our 20th day data this year against our 20th day of data from last year. Of course, we all recognize that while the moments of time are the same, we are in a very different place as a school system. We are operating virtually in the middle of a health pandemic. Before we dig into this data, I want to give a quick refresher on the chronic absenteeism rate. BDOE defines students as chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of the school year, regardless of the reason for the absence. And the chronic absenteeism rate is one of the indicators used in determining a school's accreditation status. Superintendent Cameras, can you please scroll down to slide 3? Thank you. The pie chart, which is displayed, shows 3 distinct colors. Green means, or green shows the number and percent of students who haven't missed a day of school or only missed 1 day of school in the first 20 days this year. The yellow shows the percentage and number of students who have missed 2, 3, or 4 days of school in the first 20 days this year. These students should receive targeted support, such as a weekly call home from a staff member, to ensure that whatever issue that caused the child's attendance is resolved and not likely to occur again in the near future. And the red shows the percentage and number of students who have missed 5 or more days of school during the first 20 days of school this year. These students should receive intensive support, such as receiving support for both the student and the family from a community-based organization such as Communities in Schools. Students represented in the yellow and red sections are on track to become chronically absent based on their attendance through the 20th day of school this year. Currently, after the 20th day, 21.2% of our students are on pace for chronic absenteeism. Although I will again note that this means missing just 2 days of school for many of our students was 10%. This is, however, 3% higher than last year's rate at this time of the year, which was 18.2%. Now, if you had a chance to look at the school by school data, which follows this slide, you will see a very unique shift in our data. This 3% higher rate is driven mostly by 13 elementary schools and 1 middle school that had experienced an increase of students on track for chronic absenteeism by 10% or greater. I call this shift unique because generally attendance at the elementary schools is much better than at secondary schools. To better understand this data, we reached out to the principals of these 14 schools to learn what they were hearing from their families. And they heard 3 big things, 3 big commonalities. First, some families are challenged to provide adult supervision due to the parent needing to work. In many of these cases, younger siblings are being supervised by older siblings who are RPS students themselves, and therefore getting their younger siblings logged in on a day-to-day basis is proving challenging, especially when there are multiple younger siblings in the family. Second, we're hearing about gaps in replacing broken technology. When a tablet or Chromebook breaks, were able to swap it out immediately at the school for a new tablet. However, we've learned that it may take a family a couple of days to get transportation to the school or for a parent to rearrange their work schedule to get there. There's also a fear that the family will be charged for the broken device. Let me assure the entire RPS community now that we are not charging families for broken devices, and this fear should not be an impediment to replacement. We need to work with our families to immediately learn when a device is broken so that they can get a new one the next day with no lapse in attendance. Third, unfortunately, there has been a significant increase in crime, especially in the daytime, particularly in our East End. Some students who would normally go to a learning pod in the neighborhood are no longer doing so. And some K-5 students are staying physically and emotionally hunkered down during the day due to the violence they see and hear. This explanation also makes sense for Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School, which is the only middle school that has experienced a significant increase of students on track for chronic absenteeism. However, this administration remains committed, even through this pandemic, to improve individual student attendance. We will continue to provide intensive support to families in the following ways. Our family liaisons and social workers will continue to ensure that a 5-day and 10-day attendance plans for unexcused absences are completed. This process is very important because it gives an opportunity to learn why students are absent and to connect those families to both community-based and school-based resources. Speaking of community-based resources, we will continue to work with communities and schools, Richmond Behavioral Health Authority, RBHA, and Child Savers to maximize their caseload of students to support our students and family in the most vulnerable positions. Currently, we have approximately 15 students in the queue for RBHA and a number of others who have been referred to communities and schools. We will also have division level staff calling all parents of students who have between 3 to 6 absences to check in and determine what supports we can provide these families. Also, we will look into home drop-offs for parents whose children experience technology issues, and we will continue the message that families will not be charged for broken devices or hotspots. Additionally, we have provided clear guidance to schools on how to effectively run a school-based attendance support team. And finally, each school is required to maintain a school-based spreadsheet where staff input notes on student absences based on teacher calls home after an absence. On top of adding the reasons why students are absent, school-based attendance support team members are required to note the intervention or response needed to improve an individual child's attendance and whether that response or intervention is working. I will go ahead and pause there for questions.
All right, Mr. Young, and then Mr. Barlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Harry, thank you. Appreciate, most grateful for this data. It's very helpful, particularly the school by school data. I know we've had some conversation in the past relevant to subgroup data. Do we have any of that yet, or is that still too early to assess?
Well, it's actually not too early to assess, but we just didn't pull the data in this way, but we have the ability to.
Okay, thank you, sir. And if it's Madam Chair, if it's the will of the board, I think that would be helpful, but obviously I defer to my colleagues. And if I may, just briefly, my next question regards, and I'm most grateful for how you spoke to the individualized attendance plans. But can you speak to what that? Obviously, this report is for the first 20 days. If you can speak to what that looks like right now, at present day, and if we're seeing any improvements. Again, I don't know if it's too early to assess that, but if we've been able to assess any improvement in regards to the data, even since this report was, the numbers for this report were put together specific to the individualized attendance plans.
Mr. Young, that is a very timely question, as tomorrow is the 30th day of school. So after tomorrow's attendance is taken, we'll be able to run a 30-day comparison against the first 30 days of school last year.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barlow and then Ms. Page.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Hughes, thanks a lot for the presentation here. I do think it helps lay out some context of what we're facing. And I know that, we'd like to be able to achieve the same, and we're working hard to achieve the same attendance rates that that we may have seen last year, or even improve upon them if that's possible. But when I think about what reopening with love looks like, it sounds a lot like understanding the challenges our families are facing, and trying to meet them where they are and provide those supports and provide the technology. So I'm very thankful to hear that we're working through that. But I also think it's reasonable for us as a school division to temper expectations to some degree, because this is a completely different environment. And one thing that we all knew when we decided to go virtual, and one of the reasons, although I still think it was the right thing to do, one of the reasons it was as challenging as it was because we know that we've got families at home who have a harder time supporting their students in some areas and some situations than others. So I'm not surprised by this data. Of course, I want to see attendance looking better, and I want to make sure that we're focusing on providing a quality education. But when I think about what the school year should look like, I'd love to be able to replicate and really do and provide the same type of quality in-person instruction that we typically do. But I do think we need to extend some grace to our families and to the administration, and of course, do all we can to work through this, but understand that it may not look like 2019 and 2020, and we don't have a data set to compare to. It may be helpful to look at other school divisions, but we've never encountered this type of situation before. So I just think it probably goes without saying with everyone on this call, but I just think in this meeting, but I just think it's worth noting.
Mr. Barlow, thank you for sharing that perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ms. Page, then Ms. Burke, then Ms. Cosby, then Ms. Gibson.
Thank you for this information. It's really hard to process. And what I mean by that, it just really demonstrates some of the challenges that our families, our students, our children are facing during this pandemic. My heart, it aches. So my question is, and I appreciate everything that the administration is doing, our staff, but I guess is there anything else, other supports we can put in place, looking at some maybe other school districts that have similar demographics, the similar makeup, because what we are dealing with and what we are facing, it is not unique to Richmond. Because even our school localities that are doing virtual learning, I'm sure they're experiencing the same thing with attendance. But so I guess again, my question is, can we look at, or what are some other supports that we can put in place to ensure, or to reach out to provide our students that support that they need to make sure that they attending school? And another question, was that a pattern of some of the students prior to COVID as far as attendance, or because of COVID, it's just created so many other barriers, challenges for our students? So I mean, that's something I think will be interesting also to know, what was the pattern of that student prior to COVID.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I will say with great confidence, to answer your second question first, I'll say with great confidence that the fact that we have 13 elementary schools experiencing such a great decline in attendance, that COVID has exacerbated an existing problem and made it much worse. In terms of what more can we do, I think our best bet right now is to make sure that we maximize our relationship with both RBHA and communities and schools, and to get more of our most vulnerable families and students case managed by one of these two organizations, as well as Child Savers.
Yeah, and also the community, if you see something, say something. 'Cause we can't do this by ourselves. We are in this together. So if you see something, say something.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Page. Ms. Burke, then Ms. Cosby, then Ms. Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hughes, for your report this evening. Of course, seeing the East End listed, it's disappointing, but I'm not shocked at all. I've walked the neighborhoods this weekend, and many parents shared concerns with me regarding knowing, number one, that the schools have served as a safe haven for so many of our families, and we must be mindful of that. And for instance, one parent, and I'll share this afterwards in regards to lives in public housing, stated that her son, the teacher or whomever from the school was calling, stating that he wasn't in class, but he was on. But apparently because where they're living, the internet would go in and out, even with the hotspot. So number one, I gave her my card and asked her to call me, but she didn't call me today, so maybe they worked it out, I don't know. But number one, I shared with her that I was appreciative that someone from the school is calling. So what my question to you is, getting back to the attendance piece, you said you have a spreadsheet, which is excellent. And I'm sure the teacher or the attendance officer is documenting that that call has been made. Does the parent have to put in writing, or does that count as excused absence? If the parent verbally states over the phone, John is here, he is on the lesson. Then sometimes John may fall asleep too, to be sincere, but in all sincerity and all seriousness, when someone from the school calls, does that count as the child is present, not absent, or it has to be legally a letter?
Okay, well, first, if any student has logged into Google Classroom, which means they have officially started school, but they are experiencing tech issues, which results in them not being able to log in, that absence is definitely excused. And if the school board approves our modification to the attendance policy 8-2.4, it will make it, for lack of a better term, easier for us to excuse absences. Of course, we only want to excuse legitimate absences, but it does recognize that parents are dealing with some real hardships right now.
Thank you for answering that. And another parent I talked to stated that broken technology. So they call their home school, or I know that, for instance, in the East End, ML King, I believe, is that the only area that has someone in place to address broken technology, or should they call their? I know some principals are helping their students if they bring the technology to their school, if they're in walking distance. What my concern is, if it's a school 3 or 4 miles away, how are they supposed to get help with broken technology if they don't have transportation?
Yes, so what the administration is also proposing moving forward is that if a parent in that situation calls a teacher or connects with a teacher or the principal, that individual connect with Ms. Udasco and we can arrange for drop off of technology to be able to eliminate the lag time between broken technology being swept out for working devices.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I will share that. And my last question is, in the past, we received state funding based upon our attendance in October, that last date in October, correct?
September 30th, yes.
September 30th.
Mhm.
So is that current for this school year, or that was not based upon our attendance? That's why I'm asking. Otherwise, we lost dollars,
Well,
correct?
right now, even though the report was due September 30th, we have been asked by the state to make some revisions. So we have not submitted the final. We submit a report, and if there are errors, it is sent back to us to fix. Currently, we actually have found that we are sharing some students with other divisions, which clearly either we have made or the other divisions have made a mistake. So we're trying to clear that up. But once that is cleared up, we hope to submit a final report and then give you an update regarding our enrollment for the year.
So right now, we're not up to where we were last year. So we will lose some funds then.
Oh, no, I would say right now, the report is not final. And because the report is not final, I don't want to give a guess.
Okay, all right. Just don't want to lose any money.
Absolutely.
If I may, Ms. Owen?
Yes, Mr. Cameron.
Just very briefly, I do, Ms. Burke raises a very important point. All of the superintendents across the state have been lobbying the General Assembly to hold school divisions harmless for any loss in ADM, since this is a concern across the Commonwealth as families have gone to homeschooling and private schooling. Some have left the state. The General Assembly, in essence, deferred action on that until their formal session come January. But in my most recent call with Dr. Lane, he felt the signs were very positive towards an ultimate hold harmless provision, which would ensure that divisions would not see a loss of funds due to a lower ADM. But once I have more information, I will, of course, inform the board.
Okay, thank you. Now we have Ms. Cosby, Ms. Gibson, and then Mr. Young and Ms. Page again.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. I have I do have a question in terms of, I mean, you were very clear in terms of external factors that are affecting our student attendance. I know at MLK, our building administration and our teachers are working very hard to engage our students. Also know that some of our students, you know, there was a lag in terms of them getting technology, getting a Chromebook. And we also know that there were difficulties with the hotspots. Even in one meeting, we asked about, what do you call them, boosters or enhancers. We do know that it has been articulated in these meetings that some of our parents and students were having difficulty in terms of logging on, and that there was a suggestion that in some of our public housing areas that we have boots on the ground on a regular basis every week, something that was consistent to help mediate those concerns. I do know that there was a schedule. It wasn't anything where, you know, you knew on Monday we had RPS that will be, let's say, in Wickham Court from 10 to 12 or what have you. I do know there was a schedule, though, that there were walkthroughs and there was some assistance. So my question is, and I'll be very specific with MLK, of the students, I mean, because, you know, we've gone from 37 to 97 or 32 to 97 of students who are in tier 3 in the red and almost triple. So my question is, of those students, do we know who, if all of them have technology, Do we know, and do we have those intent supports working with RRHA to have presence in, let's say, a community center, what have you, so that if people have difficulty, we're right there, boots on the ground.
Ms. Cosby, thank you for the question. First, I do agree with you. I want to publicly commend the Martin Luther King their attendance team at King. They do work extremely hard. In fact, I was on a phone call with Principal Dabney earlier today. That is also not to discount the work that our other attendance teams have done, especially in the East End. I am fairly confident that you could call up most of our principals and ask about any student on their spreadsheet, and they will tell you exactly why the student has accumulated a certain number of absences. With regards to the suggestion about continuing to partner with community organizations, yes, that is on our radar. Angela Jones, who is just steadfast on attendance, does an outstanding job of making sure our family liaisons and our social workers connect with the right community supports. And those two groups of individuals provide constant boots on the ground.
I'll also add, Mr. Hughes, that we have partnered with RRHA, so we were able to, they have liaisons in those communities. So what we found out is we needed to really align with training and making sure they have the training on how to be able to answer questions regarding technology, just so we could increase our capacity. So as you mentioned, we did have a schedule where we were doing community workshops each week, but we also trained their staff who were able to just be a little bit more available during the day to support families. And then we'll be fleshing out a new October or November schedule so that we can at least try to get to a point where we want to say, like, every Monday we are in Wickham. So we haven't had set days yet. We've had a constant and consistent presence, but I think that's our next step. We are meeting with them weekly. Our new position of hub coordinators, we have someone specifically who's working with RRHA. So we look forward to continue collaboration so we can make it even more consistent.
Thank you, Dr. Harris.
All right, thank you.
I will
Now
just,
we have Ms.
I'm
Gibson.
sorry, Ms. Owen.
Oh, I'm
I have a
sorry.
follow-up. I have a follow-up. So I will just ask that, you have something that's slated. I would just ask in terms of having that consistency, because it's something that's been stated for a few school board meetings that's needed. And so I just ask that is a priority, and that it is something that we address with a sense of urgency. You've already, you all have said, hey, people don't necessarily, they might not be able to get to the school, or because of certain things that are happening, they don't want to walk that far. Who wants to walk that far? We don't want people to walk that. I mean, what am I talking about? The bottom line is this, and I guess I do have some level of I am just extremely concerned. As I have stated many, many times, that with COVID, what we are finding, as we have said and what we see, is that the COVID is just revealing the inequities within multiple systems here in the United States that we have been blind to. And I do know, we already know African Americans, our Black and brown communities are bearing a significant brunt of the fallout from COVID. We know that. We do know that this is going to have far-reaching impact beyond this year, beyond next year, and the year after. This is a time when we will see a tremendous increase in between the haves and the have-nots. And I just implore this district And I know what our teachers and our building administrators are doing at MLK, and I hear you loud and clear with that, Mr. Hughes. But there are certain things that we've talked about, as I said, for a few school board meetings. I know I've talked about. And so I just ask that we treat this with a sense of urgency, and that for our next meeting, that is not we're going to do, but just these things are now in place. Yes, we understand that this is not, we're in unprecedented times. No one's experienced anything like this. But I think that the onus is on us to do whatever we can to help mitigate any fallout possible, because I don't want 5 and 10 years from now that our students who are going through this right now, that they can't catch up. That's not acceptable to me.
And Ms. Cosby, just to be clear, I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier. I wasn't saying that those things are not in place. We've been regularly in the RRHA communities weekly holding workshops. So we have East End family liaisons who are out each morning in the community, and we've had a set schedule every week. What I was referring to is we just want to continue to build on that and try to continue to partner with RRHA to add capacity to having even more sessions or even regular sessions in more areas. But I didn't want you to think that is not happening right now, as we've had workshops each week since you've brought that up over the past board meetings. We have increased our presence and had tech virtual workshops and in-person workshops in those communities.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I'm just addressing what you said, and you just said it. We want to be a little bit more consistent, right? So that it's something that people say, I know on this day I can get help, right?
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. Gibson, then Mr. Young, then Ms. Page.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Cosby, for continuing to drive this point home. It's critical. So my question is regarding the technology. So when will all of our students have access to a Chromebook? Because now we are at a point where a 9-mark period has come and gone, and we still have students that don't have adequate technology. And have we been able to draw any parallels between the absentees and those students that are working on a tablet? And what will be the process with those students to re-engage them if they've simply just been frustrated because the technology has not been sufficient?
I'm happy to answer that. Right now, about 80 to 85% of our PS students are working with a Chromebook. So we have a little under 4,000 kids that are on tablets. We've gotten our first notification from the manufacturer that the first wave of 2,500 Chromebooks should be delivered by the end of this month. I'm going to remain hopeful and confident that that is true, but of course, as this board knows, we were given timelines back in August as well as September. But assuming that that's the case, and we have already begun planning for that, we will begin swapping out tablets at the elementary level, then middle, then high, and elementary schools have already been asked to begin thinking through whether those will be distribution days or invitation swap outs. So I'm hopeful that within the next 3 to 4 weeks, then the rest of our 10,000 Chromebook order that we placed back in the spring will arrive, and we'll be able to complete the swap out of anyone with a tablet, as well as be able to provide Chromebooks for the small subset of students who are using personal devices at this time as well.
Yes, I mean, I think that I'm not sure how small the subset is. I think that there are substantial folks in both categories, those using personal devices that may not be sufficient, and those that are using using tablets. That data and to be able to draw those parallels so that we're giving context to both our academics and our attendance number. I mean, it's akin to, we have a transportation, if we don't have buses that can get our kids to school, that's going to affect attendance. If we don't have tablets, or if we don't have, devices for our kids to log on, it's the very same thing. And so I think it's important that we show that alignment, because right now it can appear that our students are simply not interested, but if they don't have the tools to be able to do it, then they're at a loss right out of the gate.
Absolutely. And I do want to make clear, just so the public is aware, we do have devices for every student. So we have tablets currently in the warehouse. If there is any family who does not have a device, or any family who has a broken device, we have a device for you. I do not want there to be a narrative that there is not a device available for students. What we are waiting on right now is the swap out of Chromebooks. So thank you to everyone for helping support that message. We can get a device to anyone who does not have one.
All right, thank you, Mr. and Ms. Page, and then Dr. Sapini.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I won't belabor the point that multiple folks have addressed, specifically in the context of what we knew would materialize, I specifically widening of the gap and this exponential increase in inequity. But I do want to ask a question of Mr. Hughes, specific to the number of actual absences. If you have perhaps this evening, the actual aggregate absence data we're reviewing in the slideshow, and it's very, very helpful. Thank you. But we're reviewing the number of students that have missed a certain percentage of days, but relevant to how I kind of framed my what I'm going to ask in this question. My concern is, and perhaps you can correct me, but that among some of the students that are in the red, in the bright red, that it's more than just 20%. That perhaps there are a lot of students that have missed a significant percentage of those first 20 days. So perhaps if you could address that, if my thesis is correct, and one, and two, if you have that update in regards to number of absences, days missed as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Young. To answer your question, yes, your hypothesis is correct. We have students who have ranged probably from missing, we probably have a number of students who have only missed 2 days of school. And yes, we probably have students who have missed, I would say, 10 plus days of school. In terms of the actual number of each student with regards to how many absences they have and the aggregate number of absences across the division, I'll need some time to run those numbers.
Right. Thank you. Ms. Page.
Yes, thank you. I failed to mention, I want to thank the administration for putting back the mobile help desk at Bouchard Middle School. As we have all shared our concerns, you just eliminated one less barrier that our families have to deal with, with putting back the mobile help desk at Bouchard, because we know the South Side is just widespread, and transportation was a barrier before, and it's more of a barrier with COVID. So again, I just want to thank you, because I would be remiss if I did not thank the administration for that. Greatly
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I'm sure our families appreciate it as well.
Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Page.
Thank you. Dr. Sapini.
Yes, thank you. My question is regarding the Chromebooks, the devices. Back at the beginning of the school year, I asked if we knew the number of graduating seniors who had received a device, a Chromebook, and how many were returned. Were we ever able to get that information?
Yep. It's actually something that I am still working to close out. So with our tech services team, we identified the seniors who had not yet returned their Chromebook. We divvied that list up by high schools, and those office associates and school teams have been making calls. We've gotten back about another 100 or so in the last couple weeks. They're doing a final push for what looks like about 70 outstanding devices. At some point we will, or we have the ability to turn them off as well, but we're doing one last push for with those families to see if we can get those devices back. So yes, that is something we're working on. Thank you again.
Okay. Ms. Cosby.
Thank you. Speaking of seniors and the devices, that just made me think, and it's not somewhat, it does relate to attendance too, but there was an article in the Free Press about our graduation rate, and when are we going to get a report? Am I frozen?
No, you're not. Superintendent Cameras?
Sure. I'm glad to discuss with Ms. Owen and Ms. Burke at our next agenda setting when we can bring that to the board for discussion.
I hope it would be sooner rather than later. I mean, when we were talking about what, 71%? And what is that, a decrease in what is that?
I'm glad to, yeah, we're glad to bring that as soon as possible. I do want to note it's actually an increase over last year. Obviously, it's still, of course, far lower than we would want or expect. But I do want to correct the narrative that has been portrayed that it was a decrease. In fact, it was an increase of about 1%. But yes, we're glad to bring that information very soon. So glad to schedule that at our next agenda setting.
Thank you. All right. I just want to say one thing that I'm not sure is clear to everybody who might be looking at this report. When you see that some schools had significant drops in membership, a lot of that is due to the rezoning. So schools like Lucille Brown lost students, Bouchard lost some students, Robert Elementary lost students.
Fairfield Court.
When you see this big drop in membership, it isn't because all those people left the district or are homeschooling. A lot of them are the big increase over at River City and Cardinal, and probably the same thing is true over at George Mason. So I think that's really important not to go and like, oh my gosh, look at all these people who left the school. Well, they've gone to a new school, so they're still with us, at least most of them. So thank you all very much, and we will now move on.
I have a comment, Ms. Owen.
Okay. Ms. Cosby.
So well, you know, when this information was last presented, well, not quite this information, but our attendance data, you know, that point was noted that some of the numbers, you know, had to do with rezoning. And so then the ask was that we would, as much as possible, get attendance numbers that you know, have some understanding of what the attendance expectation was based on our rezoning process versus, you know, actual versus the actual information about attendance. So those who are not attending, right? So what would it actually look like? So if we knew, I'm just going to throw out MLK, although it doesn't necessarily fit into this, that we knew that, you know, with rezoning, our numbers would go down to, you know, 570. And yet when we look at our attendance data, we show a decrease of, you know, 70 students. So it's gone down to 500. So we know, as opposed to it being 672 from rezoning, is actually the expectation was that it would be 570. So then we can really look and have a more accurate picture of our attendance rates, if there are declines or increases or what have you. So we did talk about this the last time, and so in terms of the next iteration, will we be able to have this type of more accurate data?
Well, I was talking about membership, you know, the actual membership.
Well, I'm talking about it too, membership.
Okay.
I do want to point out that you can look at the percentages of students in the various tiers, which accounts for the change in membership. So by looking at what percentage are in green, yellow, and red, that takes into account that there have been changes in membership. If the board is interested in how close the number of students total in a school is to what was projected from Cropper, we can of course upload Cropper's estimates again, and folks can look at that to try to make some comparisons. Of course, that doesn't take into account, you know, another year has gone by and there are all kinds of other transitions of kids in and out, but we can certainly re-upload that report and get a sense of how close that was.
Okay, thank you. And now hope we can move to 5.06, the resolution, Ms. Yadasco.
Sure, I'm happy to read that on behalf of the board this evening. So the resolution states National School Bus Safety Week and School Bus Transportation Employees Appreciation Day. Whereas RPS school bus transportation employees are diligent in their efforts to ensure the safe and efficient transportation of thousands of RPS students, and whereas because of the precious cargo that travel on school buses, being a professional school transportation employee is in large part about safety, training, and enthusiasm. And whereas school bus drivers adhere to the highest standards of school bus safety through rigorous driver training and certification requirements, and whereas in many cases, school buses are the only means of transportation to and from school for many RPS students, which has a direct student-on-student punctuality and attendance, and whereas RPS school bus transportation employees should be recognized for their diligence in safely transporting our students, and whereas RPS school bus transportation employees have remained tirelessly committed to ensuring that our students have access to healthy meals during the pandemic by delivering food throughout our communities. Now, therefore, in recognition of the numerous contributions made by school bus transportation employees, the School Board of the City of Richmond and the school administration joins the Commonwealth of Virginia and recognizes October 19th through 23rd, 2020 as National School Bus Safety Week and October 21st, 2020 as School Bus Transportation Employees Appreciation Day, and calls upon all citizens to join in celebration and support of school bus transportation employees.
Thank you, Ms. Yadasco.
Ms. Owen, would the board like to vote to approve this resolution? We didn't add it as an action, you just added to receive it.
I
Well-
move that we approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Barlow and Ms. Burke seconded. Okay, let's vote.
Thank you. Ms. Page?
Yes.
Ms. Cosby?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Aye.
Dr. Sapini?
Yes.
Ms. Dorr?
Yes.
Mr. Barlow,
Yes.
Ms. Gibson,
Yes.
Ms. Burke,
Yes.
and Ms. Owen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right, let us now receive the financial statements for the periods July 1st through September 30th. These were posted to board docs.
I'll just share the one caveat from our finance team is that we're generally on track. You will note that we've spent more money through September of this year as compared to last, but that's given the board's approval of the budget transfers for the academic learning kits and technology purchases that were front loaded.
All right. I don't see any questions or comments. So also we would now receive other informational items, but these are just for your information unless somebody needs to discuss them, the budget transfers and the audit work plan. Okay. Any new business? Okay, Ms. Dorr, and then Ms. Cosby.
Hi. Sorry if this was addressed in the start of the meeting, but I was just wondering if the leadership could comment on, or the administration could comment on, when we are discussing how we're thinking about reopening, if we're thinking about reopening, kind of what the framework is there. I just don't want it to get to December and us not laying the groundwork for some key decisions, especially around the budget. So would just love an update. Or to put in an official request. I know others have requested as well, similar things.
Okay, and Ms. Cosby has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in regards to the audit work plan, when will, I didn't know we were just receiving it today. I thought we had an opportunity to, when are we going to be able to discuss it? Mr. Parker, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, when my colleague, Ms. Page, asked, what can we do? And he said, you know, more vision and direction from the board. So outside of the finance committee, when will this board, the full board, be able to have a discussion about this work plan, one? And second, is this something that can be on the agenda on a regular basis?
Okay.
Ms. Owen,
Ms. Dorr?
I can just respond to that briefly. The plan was for Mr. Parker, I believe, to come at the next meeting. This is posted for you all to just notice that it's there so that you have time to review it in advance of that.
Okay. Yes. Okay. And I believe that there's a plan also for regular updates from the team.
Yes.
Okay. Any new business? All right, announcements.
Madam Chair.
All right, Ms. Burke.
Okie dokie. Thank you. Just thinking back to the COVID update that was shared with us earlier by Ms. Hadasco. The presentation overall, thinking in terms of our safety and the awareness of what's in place through Richmond Public Schools. I am pleased that the board and the administration continue to work together for the safety of all of our families, but our employees as well, especially during this time of the implementation of COVID protocols, safety protocols. And that the board and the administration, we take this very seriously. When and what level of detail of information is shared regarding how COVID has impacted our employees is carefully considered. balancing the need for transparency and confidentiality rights of our employees. Any inference made to the contrary is not an accurate portrayal of what our board and administration strives to achieve and stand for. So that's just want us to be there together and let our employees know that we're here on behalf of making the best decisions that we possibly can. And to infer otherwise, we're better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do have an announcement about the Infinite Scholars Program. And I don't know if all of you are aware of this, but it's an absolutely amazing thing that is done each year for our students to apply for scholarships. And last year it was at the convention center, and I went to that and I was just bowled over by what they were doing. And I mean, millions of dollars in scholarships have been offered to RPS graduates. So this year is going to be virtual. So I hope that our principals in our high schools are sharing this information with the families. But I want to be sure that everybody out there knows that next, let me see if I can get this right. The website is www.infinitescholar.org. INFINITESCHOLAR.org. And the virtual college fair platform will be on Halloween, Saturday, October 31st from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And there will be people there from all these different colleges, and they would love to talk with these students and hear what their desires and dreams are. And I would point out that this is especially true of our historically Black universities and colleges. They are well represented, and it is also helped by the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, as well as the Delta House Foundation and the Infinite Scholars, which is it works across the country. So please, if you have a senior in high school, this is something you should not miss.
Madam Chair Owen.
Yes, sir.
Can I
Mr.
also, yes, can I also add that the event is for both juniors and seniors?
Oh, okay.
And last year, 295 RPS students walked away with over $11 million in scholarship money.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Okay. Any other announcements?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Page.
I just want to also echo the sentiments about the Infinite Scholar affair and next Superintendent Cameras. Is that something we can post on our website? Because this is a wonderful opportunity for our students, and because of COVID, we know it's different, but we do not want our students to miss out on this opportunity. A great opportunity. And not only are HBCUs in attendance, there are other schools as well.
Many.
So, yes, so please, if you can share this information on the website.
All right.
It'd be very appreciative. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. And to all a good night. I hereby adjourn this meeting.